City, and welcome to the July 12th, 2022 work session meeting. It's great to be back and seeing all the bright faces in front of me. We welcome the members of the public who are in person and who may be watching our usual video feeds online. Hybrid council meetings allow people to join online through WebEx or in person at the city building. We are continuing to watch COVID rates to make the safest choice for all of us. In fact, although masks are no longer required in the building, since COVID cases are rising, we encourage people to wear masks while they're here in the meeting. There are some in the hallways if anyone needs one. We will continue to monitor the situation and take any and all reasonable precautions for the public and staff. As many of you know, there is no public comment during a work session. However, please join us at the 7 p.m. formal meeting tonight for a public comment opportunity. And of course, the council always invites the public to provide feedback with the City Council at any time on general topics by mailing us at P.O. Box 145476, Salt Lake City 84114, or emailing us at council.comments@slcgov.com, or calling our 24-hour phone line 801-535-7654. Lastly, the council is excited to announce our Tuesday, July 19th meeting will be held on the west side at the Sorensen Unity Center located 1383 South, 900 West in the Black Box Theater Room. Our work session will begin at 2, followed by our 7 p.m. formal meeting with opportunity for public comments. Please join us at our off-site meeting. We will now start off our work session items with our normal informational update from the admin. And we have Rachel Otto here, and we have Weston, and I thought I saw Andrew. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chair and council members. At the conclusion of Andrew's presentation or update today, we also have Captain Derek Diamond and Deputy Chief Scott Morcos joining us to give you a few PD updates, police department updates. So at the conclusion of Andrew, they are joining virtually. Okay, if we could go to the next slide. Okay, so it's been a while since we've met with you guys in person to talk about COVID and all of these regular updates. I know we're all paying close attention to the latest variant and quickly kind of go through some of our regular numbers today for situational awareness. So I gave you the comparison between June 14th and this week here. You see just the very, very slightest uptick in eligible people that are up to date on their COVID vaccines. So, you know, it seems like that's just kind of holding steady. We're not getting a ton of traction there. It'll be interesting to see if the health department starts tracking numbers of infants and those under 5 who are getting vaccinated, what those figures look like over time. But thus far, I haven't found those for Utah yet. So those are our kind of our general dashboard slide from the county. Next slide, please. So case identification, I know we all knew like 10 people a month ago that all had COVID, and today we maybe know like 4 people who have COVID in our near circles, right? So you see a little bit of a downturn in case identification this week. Of course, those numbers are still a little bit circumspect because of all of the home testing that is happening now. Next slide, please. Hospitalizations are down from where they were a month ago. Only 66 new hospitalizations this week, and you see that that was getting pretty high in June, although, of course, lower than we were seeing at the peak and with some of the more problematic variants. Next slide, please. Here's the wastewater data, and this is not, this doesn't look that revealing, but I will say that on some of the wastewater data that we've gotten that Director Briefer gets directly from this system here points out that the last round of testing, the indicator was quite a bit bigger than it had been the previous round of testing. So although you presently see there's no trend in Salt Lake City, we may see that shift by the time we talk about this again next week. So presently, no trend. Next week, I guess we'll wait and see, because I know that the sample sizes is getting bigger right now. And next slide, please. So all of that is probably due to the subvariants BA5, which are thought to be a lot more transmissible than previous subvariants. And according to recent CDC data, BA5 accounts for more than half of the current COVID cases in the US, so spreading very rapidly. These variants also seem to have the ability to evade antibodies produced after vaccinations and infections. So while we've all been really excited when we get COVID because we think that we're extra specially protected for a couple of months afterwards, that may not be the case with some of the most recent subvariants. According to the New York Times, since I've been giving you these figures for a little while, cases in Utah are actually only up 1% in the past 14 days. And last time I reported to you, I think it was more like the 30% in the last 14 days. And Utah has slipped down to the 27th fastest growing state for new cases. Based on my very, very layperson observation, it seems like we're seeing, the spikes again happen in some of the places where we normally have seen those big spikes, and then it will wave across the U.S. again. So, buckle up, stay healthy, all those things. Next slide, please. Wanted to give you the weekly watering guide for this week in case it had escaped your notice. It's really dry out there, and this is the recommendation that the watering guide would be 3 irrigations. Again, critical to make sure that you're checking your sprinklers to make sure that they are operating correctly and you're not overwatering or watering the sidewalk or the street or whatnot. It is important to maintain some water for those trees that we all want to protect and keep thriving in the city, but overwatering is, of course, not advised. Next slide, I think, is my last slide. And this, I just wanted to point out that you can, or residents can, report sprinkler issues on SLC Mobile. That is the app where you can report all manner of things in the city for attention. And there's actually a report type there called water conservation, and you can pinpoint the location. And public utilities will do their best to contact the property owner if there is a sprinkler that's broken or firing into the street or whatever. So please feel free to report those things if you see them on public property, private property, residential property, whatever the case may be. Any questions? Okay, thanks. I'll pass it to Weston.
All right. Engagement highlights. The website, of course, that is maintained by Civic Engagement Team. They keep it as up to date as possible. If you see anything missing, please let us know, and we will try to get it on there. That we call the feedback page. We're trying our best to really collect everything we can that requires or is asking the community to provide feedback on and put it there for sort of a one-stop shop. Next page, transportation update, 300 North construction. As you know, in 2024, 300 North will be reconstructed from 300 West to 1000 West. Based on community input received to date, 2 initial concepts for public review and comment are available. You can get to it through a survey that is linked through the feedback page. 11th East and Highland reconstruction. In 2023, there will be construction on Highland, 11th East, between 900 South and Warnock Avenue. The project continues to be in the design phase. There will be a business workshop tomorrow in the Sprague Library from 5:30 to 7:30. If you know anybody that would like to attend that as they continue through the outreach on that project early on in the project. 2100 South reconstruction, 2025 is when 2100 South will be reconstructed from 7th East to 13th East. This project is a little earlier in the development phase. There will be very soon a survey announced that individuals can participate in through the end of the month. So stay tuned for details on that. Next slide. Public Utilities has launched their Adopt a Storm Drain program. They've had over 30 residents sign up already. This is where residents can take their time and energy to keep drains clear of debris and promote some cleaner waterways. I think they can even name it as well. Like Drainy McDrain Face is what I would name mine if I did it. Maybe I should sign up. And slc.gov utilities, adopt a storm drain is where you find that. South Temple Storm Drain Rehabilitation, this is a construction project that's going to be going from today through September 30th. Will impact left turns on South Temple and as they move from east to west on South Temple. The water reclamation facility, as you all know, is being reconstructed and this is still slated to be done in 2025. Later this month, utilities will be releasing a construction highlight progress brochure that will let you all know where they're at on that. And the next slide, sustainability. The Community Renewable Energy Program, Plan for Low-Income Assistance, they now have a live survey that is linked through the feedback page that is open through August 7th. As you know, this is to better understand residents' energy burden, energy choice preferences. They're working with community-based organizations to work on some of their outreach. They did a scientific version of this survey already in April and May. This is just another opportunity for the community to participate. And then the EV Ready Ordinance, in collaboration with the Planning Department, is headed to the Planning Commission. It'll be there tomorrow, and then heading your way after that. That's all of my updates. Any questions?
No questions. Thanks.
Thanks.
Next slide, please. The shelter capacity is still high, 97% in the last week. That's been pretty consistent over the last month, in fact. And you can see that the Miller Mixed Resource Center is at 100%. That and Geraldine have kind of flip-flopped it at full capacity exactly for a few weeks now. Next slide. Resource Fair was last week. This is new in that it happened in South Salt Lake. And so there's a collaboration between Salt Lake City and South Salt Lake to do it at the Tracy Avery Nature Center. And South Salt Lake has some staff that participated with our staff. You can see the partners that were there, including a new one, Powerful Moms Who Care, which is a group of folks who have experienced or have experienced homelessness in some capacity and are offering their mentorship and their support to navigate systems, and very good group. A lot of justice court work was done as well, and then kayak court is this coming Friday also. Next slide. Right now, we are under heat advisory, I believe, until at least Thursday evening, and probably past that. I saw 6 out of the next 7 days will probably top 100 degrees, and lows will be quite high as well at night. So we have a lot of questions about resources, and the biggest resource right now are city and county libraries and county senior centers and recreation centers. Those are open to anybody who can come in. They do have water. Some of them have showers. Air conditioning, obviously, especially during the daytime hours, recommending everyone who's unsheltered who can get there. The outreach teams are actively working and promoting them to get into those resources, and also giving out other resources like water and basic needs through the VOA outreach teams primarily. And then the resource centers are also offering hydration stations, and so you'll see a number of folks who are in the shade or in the lobbies getting water during the daytime of those centers. There's still ongoing need for donations. So if anybody's interested in helping, the resource centers, the providers are looking for water and other things. You can go to their websites and see a complete list and how to help out. The last piece that's not on a slide here is another update on the this coming winter overflow process. There is another meeting this week of the Conference of Mayors Subcommittee that's actively going through a list of potential properties. They're sorting through the feasibility of each of those, and there should be a recommendation or recommendations, plural, coming to the larger group in the next few weeks. And we'll know probably in the next month, a little more than that, what the outcome of that first phase of that process is. And we can update you at that point. Any questions, Mr. Chair?
Councilor Victoria.
Hi. So as predicted, my neighborhood's the front lines of this. RV removal from places that are on school, like within school radiuses, and very proximate to where young people live who have been peeped on in recent history. Are there any additional resources for moving RVs? Any plans for a place for them to go?
For the removal, there has been a problem for a while now, as you're aware, about the contractor or contractors we've had. I'm told that's been resolved, and there is a contractor that's actually going out with the police department to help with those particular issues. So if you or others are reporting those, they're on our list and they will be addressed, particularly schools is a high priority. The second piece of that question about a place for them to go, there's currently no plan that I'm aware of through the county or the city for a location for sanctioned use of RVs, that kind of way. We are still enforcing that 48-hour block face requirement, and hopefully that will continue forward with our also options of trying to help with repairs and those kind of things to keep people moving as much as we can. But it has been difficult for a while now, but it should be resolved as far as the towing piece.
And then secondarily, it's a really sad confluence that we're witnessing of people without shelter and the environmental conditions around them. Cottonwood Dog Park had a fire in the bushes there where people have been camping out, resulting in the people at the dog park watching people who are homeless trying to gather their things and run for their lives. And we've had several instances reported by constituents of people who are homeless that their life is hell and they are tired of living in hellish conditions, and they're snapping when people are talking to them who are sheltered. And then similarly, my neighbors who are sheltered are tired of living with the crisis on their doorstep, and they're snapping. I am really concerned, and I want to be on public record, that we are creating a tragedy in the West Side neighborhoods. As these temperatures increase, as resource scarcity becomes more a thing because of climate change, we are seeing that the West Side communities are increasingly facing these just basic humanitarian issues. I don't know that park rangers are going to be equipped to deal with it by the time they get there because the crisis is becoming exacerbated. Is there any plan to intervene or to give people a place to go or to do something that will offer protection to these humans who deserve to have some peace of mind as they face a humanitarian crisis?
The first piece of that, which was a positive step, I'll say a small one. The reason I highlighted South Salt Lake participating in a resource fair is that's the first time that I'm aware of that another city has been stepping into that realm to help in that limited capacity. It doesn't mean that that led to everybody getting indoors, which is what we'd like to see. That's a starting point. The next phase that we've been talking through here is how do we leverage city resources, in our case, to help with temporary or permanent options. There are several projects that are going forward right now, some of which you may be aware of as well, that would offer indoor space, and several hundred of them in the near future, to get folks into housing. That is ultimately what the coalition and the state are trying to help do. In the meantime, it is very, very tough. Acknowledge that fully. There are several, we're looking at about 400 people that we are identifying that need help come this winter, and that's sort of our threshold, right? We have lost some of the funding through one-time stimulus money that we've used for motel rooms. From the city end, you have budgeted money and allocated it that is being used towards folks who are unsheltered getting into motel rooms towards the housing piece, and the outreach workers are actively doing that in those camps. We obviously always need more of that, but that is a step that's being taken. We just need more and more of it. And part of the planning for this winter is it's got to be temporary because by state statute it's 6 months. There's clearly a need year-round, and we are short that many beds year-round. So that is the goal, that number. We're not there, and we are trying to do everything we can to give resources in a temporary measure right now, but we don't have enough, as you said. So we are asking the public to please help us know where they're at. We're continuing to send out resources every week. We're talking about every camp that we know of every week to get resources to them. And we'll talk to you about the rapid intervention team as well and their work to do pre-work with every single camp they can before any cleanings or anything's happen that way. Because you're right, just balancing two pieces of human safety and trying to take care of themselves in ways that sometimes are detrimental, with also the reality we don't have a lot of resource options currently. So thanks for bringing that up. We appreciate it. I do appreciate the dire need out there, and we are still working on it.
Mr. Chair? Very quickly, I just want to, I appreciate all the efforts on this issue, and it's obviously not an easy thing to solve, and if we could all solve it, we would. But, you know, I am getting just so many messages and complaints and related to violence along the Jordan River, along North Temple, along South Temple, 1700 South, and with all the trailers and camps. And I'm getting people to tell me that they feel unsafe because they are getting harassed and bottles been thrown to people. And I am trying to, obviously, I relate to the frustration, and I'm trying to set the record straight about what this city is doing to address this issue. But at the same time, I feel like it's not enough, and I feel like all of us feel that way. I just want to put it out there that my community, and you know this very well, that it's asking for more, and I don't know what the answer is, but we need something more and something bold. And it's becoming a little out of hand, and I just hate receiving those messages of people telling me that they're never going to come back or they're never going to use the Jordan River again, and it hurts me. And I know that we can do a little better. And I don't know, again, what that is, and I appreciate the efforts, but I just wanted to put it out there that there is a lot of need, and the West Side is struggling right now with this issue.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Council Member. And perhaps talking through the police discussion next may be a piece of it, not all of it clearly, along with park range, which was brought up earlier, some physical presence, along with the other efforts with mental health outreach. We know downtown on the Jordan River particularly, we see a lot of that with the county. We're trying to work on those things. So all working together would be a piece of that, or a large part of the puzzle to solve that puzzle. So maybe we go to that next one first, and perhaps we can loop back into this and see how that works with the police department as well.
Councilmember Valdemorse.
I want to ask you about the shelters. I went and visited property yesterday, really close to the shelters, with some people from the administration and Representative Romero and Representative Briscoe. So some of the neighbors claim that, you know, there is some human trafficking out of the women's shelter in my district that go to this area. So the neighbors and they're dealing with the FBI and other things that it's beyond the city, but they were wondering with the funds. I remember that the state had given cities that had shelters some fund for police.
The mitigation
The
funds?
mitigation
Yes.
funds. And I asked them where that money was, and they said, oh, we already released it to the city, so ask the city. So here I am asking you, where is the money? How far outside from the shelter is it being used to patrol or deter crime with those funds that we got from the state?
So the money's going into the police department primarily, with some other things as well. The two pieces, police department units, we'll talk about. The second piece was some other outreach workers through the city, through our contract we already have with, say, Volunteers of America, around those resource centers. Those outreach teams are pretty flexible. They focus around those centers within a few blocks, but they can move based on where we're seeing, because you'll know at the Geraldine, within a block sometimes it's a big deal, but sometimes it's 2 blocks away south of the 7-Eleven.
Right.
So they have some flexibility there. The police department right now, I believe, is hiring sergeants. And the sergeants are the first thing on those units to run the units, and they'd be full-time assigned to the resource centers. We've talked through with the operators and the police department, and those are ongoing discussions about having them housed in the buildings or right close to the building, so physically located there in that neighborhood. Ballpark is sort of the epicenter here of that. And so talking through with both resource centers where the best location is for them to be housed. So those units would be physically there all the time. As far as jurisdictional piece and the geography around it, that's still a little fluid. I think the intention clearly is within a block to 2 blocks all the way around. But you know sort of how things move, and so they don't want to limit it to say we can't go outside that thing, but they want to make sure their focus is right there. So progress is moving forward. It's a hiring issue with the police department, obviously, and getting, probably using overtime first up and then backfilling through their recruiting classes and other folks moving around the department. So it will take some time to ramp up that way, but the first step is those sergeants recruiting newer people, getting the infrastructure where they're going to be located in place. So the funding will go towards those things first.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And so we'll go to the police, and I think, is Brent providing the briefing?
Actually, I believe that Deputy Chief Marcos and Captain Diamond will be on to give this update. And this, I know we all have been getting a lot of questions and concerns regarding Main Street. So we've asked the police department to come talk specifically about plans for that area. Thanks.
Great. It's all yours, gentlemen.
Thank you. Good afternoon. It's good to be here. I asked Captain Diamond to come along as he's a division commander over that specific area, so he has the most information about the significant amount of attention that he's been putting to that area and what we've been doing as a police department. So I'll go ahead and turn the time over to him to explain that, and of course I'd be happy to answer any questions following that as well.
Okay, good afternoon. Specifically, I was asked with regard to the 300 South issue we've been having on Main Street and how we were addressing that problem. 300 South has been a problem area for a while. With the issue of, we've got several businesses there that are closed, boarded up businesses with alcoves that are inviting for some of our unsheltered friends. It makes them kind of feel like they could go in and lay down there and be out of the sun. Other issues we've got is that we find they're going into the shaded areas by the planter boxes and laying down, hanging out in that area. We get complaints constantly through the Downtown Alliance and in elsewhere about all the illegal activities and about them being around. And so we spent a lot of time trying to address, exactly why they're there, what's causing it, what we can do about it. And one of the biggest issues that we're finding that's been difficult is just the fact that they're homeless, unsheltered. A lot of times they have serious mental health issues. They may be unkempt, dirty, but short of them committing any crime, sometimes it's hard for us to actually just tell them they need to leave the area. The area, like I said, it's shaded. It's a nice, inviting place to be there, and that's exactly why they're there, is somewhere to go. And when it comes down to it, they are people, and we can move them. We can encourage them to go to a different spot, but then ultimately they're going to go somewhere else. And then wherever else they decide to go to, then we'll start calling and complaining and having a lot of issues there. So beyond that, what we're doing as a police department is I've identified that as one of my top 3 blocks in the Central Patrol Division area that I'm directing all the resources whenever officers have time. Maybe even it's just when they're in between calls and they're trying to write a report. I'm directing them to that area to either sit in their car and do the report in the area, or if they have time to get out and walk that block, try to offer some ideas of assistance if there's people that are unsheltered, or if there's any kind of illegal activity going on. Obviously, that's where we're most interested in, is stopping illegal activity, whether it be drug sales or use. Obviously, we had a issue of violence yesterday, which we arrested the person almost immediately. And so there are a lot of people down there. So beyond the regular patrol officers, which generally anywhere from 6 to 14 officers directly part of the Central Patrol Division that are covering the whole central area. We also have the illegal camp mitigation officers that are doing overtime. They're responsible for Pioneer Park, Rio Grande, the two HRCs, and then the surrounding areas. And so we've added some extra shifts into the area of 300 South Main. And as for the next couple of weeks anyway, I've added 2 officers on foot between 10 in the morning and 6 o'clock at night to stay in that area to make sure that it's clear and try to have people that are looking at doing any kind of illegal activities is pushing them away from that area. But then, the trick is where do they go from there? And, how do we maintain that pressure on them or try to get arrested when, when we do find that illegal activity. So, that's kind of the gist of what we've got going on. I'm willing to field any questions that you might have.
Council, any questions? Councilman Baldwin Wallace.
Thank you for that. I wanted to ask you, in the area of Geraldine, a few months ago, you guys put 2 patrols in between 2nd East and 3rd East, and they were just parked for a while, and I feel like that deterred a lot of illegal activity from that block for a while. Now we're kind of getting back to what it used to be, especially on Toffer Park. But regardless, I do feel like that was effective in a way. I did notice that on 3rd South, you guys put cameras, like the mobile ones.
Yes.
But what would it take for you guys to be stationed, even if you took a couple of parking stalls out of in one of the medians or whatever you can park in that area to hopefully deter the illegal activity? We're not talking about people hanging out by a planter. That's totally fine. I think what the concern is, people, trafficking drugs, the sales, the open drug use, which is very dangerous, and also other human necessities that people need to do that hopefully, we deter that as well. So I'm not sure how often you patrol. Like, are you going around the block? I don't know if that's information that we can share in the public because it's that type of information, but is it possible that we would have a couple of patrol cars parked overnight, during the day, whenever you guys think, it's
Sure.
most appropriate?
And that's a great question. That's exactly what we're looking at. So you referenced down there by Geraldine King when we had those officers parked. That actually still is part of the ongoing camp mitigation officers, and they are doing those things in all those areas, including over by Topher Park and Geraldine King, Pioneer Park, Rio Grande, and 3rd South and Main. I believe the last time I checked, in the last 2 weeks, we've spent as a police department over 60 hours in the area of 300 South Main. When I looked at the statistics, they'd made 146 contacts, 5 felony arrests, and 7 misdemeanor arrests in that area. And so there's almost constant contact. I know myself and my executive officer go over there every weekday and spend some time over there. I went over there this morning, and actually it's looking really good today. But like I said, I've got some of those camp mitigation officers. I increased their shifts during the weekdays to where there's officers that are actually going to be on foot there in that kind of 3rd South Main corner area, walking around. That's going to be something that, like I said, hopefully it'll help make some deterrence. But even when that we finish that up, we still will maintain constant pressure in that area to keep the illegal activities out. And I'm always hearing about the illegal activities, and we've sent undercover officers over there. I've spent a lot of time watching, and I know that it's pushed out there that it's happening all the time, but we do spend a lot of time there, and unfortunately, or I guess fortunately, it's not quite as prevalent as what is always reported to me, because we're just not seeing that. I think a lot of the issues are people see the homeless people there acting strangely because of a mental health issue, or they're dirty and just assume that they're doing something illegal. And now, mind you, I'm not saying that the illegal stuff doesn't happen, because it happens in more places than just there. But It's a difficult situation because I think a lot of people think we can just go over there and arrest all the people and they're doing something illegal, and it's not necessarily the case. But the great ideas as far as putting pressure there. We are actually actively working with business owners right there with possibility of putting a Salt Lake City Police substation right there around 280 South Main, which would I would probably house my bicycle unit there. So that means there would be police cars in the area, police officers on bikes coming and going quite often. And I think that would be beneficial to make that area, stay a little clearer too.
Thank you. I would just add to your comments, and I appreciate the work and the additional work that you guys are planning to do, but also to extend some of that love to North Temple in 800 West, where we know it's also a hub for illegal activity, and the river the one that I have it most present is North Temple. So if that, if we can deter some of the crime that way, by all means, please use those resources that we have. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Councilmember Fowler.
Well, and I'm sorry, I was just going to say I can address that North Temple. We have been putting a significant amount of resources into the North Temple area as well. North Temple is Pioneer Patrol Division rather than Central Patrol Division. And so that's the area that they've been focusing on over in Pioneer Patrol Division. And they've been putting hundreds of hours of effort along North Temple, as well as getting the contractor to come and spray the streets along there. And we've been seeing a lot of work from our patrol officers in that area. It's important to keep in mind that while we push as many resources there as we can, we still are struggling with significant staffing issues and rising calls for service. So we would love to put more resources there as we build those numbers back up. But until that time, we put as many as we can in those areas that we've identified within each patrol division.
Thank you. Councilmember Fowler.
Yeah, thank you so much. I just wanted really quickly to chime in that I appreciate all of the efforts. I know this is complicated, not easy, lots of things, and not. While I know that there are higher concentrations in some areas, we're seeing this all over, and we're seeing this in Fairmont Park, where we had so much effort in really trying to reach out to people experiencing homelessness and create a park there that people could go to, that now I'm getting all of the emails about, and I walk by it every day. And so I know that this is an issue that everyone's working on, and I appreciate that. And I just want to say, and I'm sorry, Officer Diamond, I don't know if it's detective or sergeant or officer, person in blue with a badge, Diamond.
It's captain, but I'll take any of them.
Okay, I'll give them all to you. That's fine. I have no power to do that, but I will give them to you. Captain Diamond, I want to say thank you for what you just said. That so much of what the complaints we hear are the perception that people have, and not the actuality of what people experiencing homelessness are going through. And I really want to say I truly appreciate you reminding us of that perspective, and kind of taking that moment to remember the humanity of all of this as well. We all get the emails, we all get the complaints. Again, it's in all of our neighborhoods. And yet we do and are all trying very hard in so many different facets to work on all of the issues that a person experiencing homelessness has. I mean, there's an experience right now happening, right, in our office. And I just truly appreciate the humanity, and you particularly, Captain Diamond, saying that and reminding us to remember that. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Councilmember Pui.
Since we talked about substations, I wanted to bring that conversation back to here right now. What is the status, if any, of progress on North Temple substation?
We will talk with you more about this in the very near future. We're moving forward with different plans for 3 substations right now, and are looking forward to bringing details to you as soon as possible. But I don't want to talk too much right now since we don't have leases in place.
Thank you so much.
Any other further comments or questions for the police? Rachel, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Admin, thank you very much for the presentation.
Chair, can I ask?
Yes, go ahead.
We don't have fire here today, but like illegal fireworks in my neighborhood caused a backyard fire. We had several issues. Is there anything we can be doing to join with you all in preparation of Pioneer Day, knowing that we have another explosive episode coming for us?
I don't know if anybody from Fire is online, but we should definitely talk about how we can get messaging out around,
And
legal,
is there
illegal.
any chance for, I have some constituents asking for increased enforcement around fireworks violations. Any possibility we could get that?
Yeah, let's talk. Let's plan on updating next week on what those capabilities are.
Thank you.
For that weekend. Thanks for bringing that up.
Good question. Thank you. We'll be moving on to item number 2, informational update from the equity update, with Coletta here, and Moana is she online, and Fatima, Ashley, and Roxana.
Hi, thank you so
Hi,
much,
Coletta.
Council Chair. Sorry, Darby. So I actually have Darby with me today. She's our equity coordinator for special projects, and Moana is online. We also have a couple of human rights commissioners online to speak to the next item, but they are here if you all have any questions for them about CEDA. So we have a short PowerPoint presentation for you today. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to remind everyone who my team consists of. It's myself, Chief Equity Officer. Darby is our Equity Coordinator for Special Projects. Darby actually manages our Government Alliance for Race and Equity Ambassadors Program citywide. So she's going to tell you a little bit about it today. And then we have Fatima, who's our Policy Advisor for Refugees and New Americans. Roxana is our Language Access Coordinator. We also have Ashley. She's our ADA Coordinator. We just hired a new person. Her name is Michelle. She is our Equity Liaison, and she works with Darby very closely on our DEI proclamations and also on our social media posts. And we have Moana, who is our Equity Manager. You'll hear from her in a moment. She manages our Racial Equity and Policing Commission and also the Human Rights Commission. And Maria serves as executive assistant to myself and Andrew Johnston, and she's also our internship coordinator. And so I just wanted to reiterate that the role of our team is to engage with city staff, elected officials, and the public to provide education, policy recommendations, and technical assistance related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Our office provides toolkits, trainings, best practices, and support to encourage the use of an equity lens for fair and just distribution of resources and access to services and opportunities. So I want to give Darby a moment to tell you a little bit more about how we are doing with GARE and some recent rollouts across the city.
Thank you, Coletta, and good afternoon, council members. Thank you so much for your interest in this update. So as Coletta mentioned, GARE stands for the Government Alliance on Race and Equity. This national network was established in 2014. Currently, there are 36 states that participate in this network. Salt Lake City joined in June of 2020, recognizing this unique and incredible opportunity to connect and collaborate with fellow practitioners focused on achieving racial equity and advancing opportunities for all. Next slide, please. This is a picture of the home screen, just so you're aware. Salt Lake City was the first jurisdiction in the state of Utah to join the GARE network. Since that time, there have been other local jurisdictions who have expressed an interest and actually reached out to Coletta, and we have provided guidance on connecting with the GARE staff so that they can be involved as well. Additionally, we just recently renewed our GARE membership, thanks to City Council and Mayor Mendenhall for approving the budgetary funds to go towards that effort. This allows for over 3,000 of our Salt Lake City employees to gain full access to the GARE member portal, which has a plethora of resources on advancing racial equity. There's an affiliate group as well that has produced publications that are just a great resource to read about. Additionally, I would say the biggest asset is just, again, being able to connect with jurisdictions who have been doing diversity, equity, and inclusion work for a lot longer than Salt Lake City. Not that we're new by any means, thankfully, but also being able to guide some of those newer jurisdictions on, what they can do in their cities. Next slide, please. So this slide is just a highlight of the major milestones that we've achieved since joining the network. Again, that was in June of 2020. That included naming a GARE program manager, which is me, identifying department representatives to serve as GARE ambassadors. This year, we actually had great citywide participation as well for the annual GARE membership conference. That was a hybrid format, which was really cool. They did a great job. And then again, just being able to renew the membership so that we can continue the work. Next slide, please. So the GARE ambassadors are currently responsible for attending a monthly meeting. They are responsible for implementation of GARE within their respective departments. They're also responsible for interdepartmental training and facilitations. And just so you all are aware, the larger departments do have more than one representative. So that would include, for example, public services. I believe we have 3 or 4 GARE ambassadors for that department. And we have been meeting since last September. We are in the process right now of trying to move forward with next steps for the program, and we recently submitted a report to Mayor Mendenhall for review and approval of those next steps. That's the update that I wanted to provide. Are there any questions?
Councilmember Mono.
Just out of curiosity, does our office have a GARE ambassador?
Yes, we have Hassan Abdi.
Oh, Hassan.
There we
Great.
go. Hassan,
Wonderful.
excuse me.
And then there have been select trainings that when they apply to a broader group of us, multiple staff members will attend those trainings on specific topics. So it's been a great resource for, I think, for the city and our office.
Thank you.
Thank you,
very much.
Darby. And we also want to acknowledge that we know that this is maybe in part additional work. However, we are exploring incentives for employees and how we can help to either compensate them or provide additional benefits for them to participate as GARE ambassadors, language access liaisons, and also ADA liaisons. So those are 3 separate functions and 3 separate persons for each department. And so now we have an update by Moana. I believe she's online.
Yeah.
And it looks like we also have Commissioner Stoll with us and Commissioner Salazar Hall.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can we have the next slide, please? Before we talk about the Human Rights Commission and go into the CDAW proposed ordinance, I wanted to give a quick update about the 2 commissions that I manage. So a quick update for the Racial Equity and Policing Commission. This month we're in summer recess and we'll reconvene in August. During this month, we are updating the REP webpage so that it is a bit more functional and accessible for everyone to know the work and understand the work that the REP has been undergoing over the last couple of years. And then we are currently working with SLCPD on the hiring process for local diversity trainers, providing feedback for the SRO MOU contract negotiation with Jennifer Newell, and then re-examining ways in which racial and ethnic data is collected in Salt Lake City. And then we are drafting the end-of-year report that would be presented to the mayor and city council on work that has been completed, in progress, and recommended for 2022. Next slide, please. And for the Human Rights Commission, also in summer recess and will reconvene in August. We're also updating the HRC webpage and drafting the end-of-year report. And Just to highlight that we have a candidate that will be interviewed for District 3, and we're excited about that today by the City Council later this evening. And then District 4 and 6 recently opened because a couple of our commissioners moved out of state. So we are actively looking to fulfill those 2 spots. And the commission has been working with Andrew Johnston in supporting efforts to addressing homelessness in the city, as well as reviewing and providing feedback for the language access policy. And of course, awaiting this process for the CDAW ordinance. All right, next slide, please.
And before we move to the next slide, Council Chair, do you want us to hold this until the next item, or do you want her to go ahead and talk about CDAW?
So we can just hold this to the next item.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do
all
that.
right. Thank you. So that concludes our equity update.
Okay. So let's just move quickly into item number 3, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, CDAW, and Gender Equity. Go ahead, Moana.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to acknowledge the commissioners that are here with us. It's our Chair, Esther Stoll, and then our Vice Chair, Jason Wessel, and then we have Commissioner Salazar Hall that is joining us today. And they specifically have been on the subcommittee that has been pushing and researching and working on this ordinance. I'd also like to thank Hannah, who is part of the Attorney's Office, for all the work that she has done in drafting up the proposed ordinance. And acknowledging all the members and people that have been part of bringing CDAW into its current form that we're presenting to you today. It's been years in the making. I also wanted to just go over a few things historically about the timeline here in Salt Lake City, that since 2009, it was a Human Rights Commission recommendation to propose an ordinance such as this one. And over the years in 2011 and 2012, data was compiled, and dialogues on women or community were held within Salt Lake City. Some of you who are serving now on the City Council were part of these discussions and gathering data. So the 2013 The Status of Women in Salt Lake City report was published by the Office of Diversity and Human Rights and focused on education, health, and safety of women, as well as their political and social and economic power within Salt Lake City. And so in 2016, there was a joint resolution passed here in Salt Lake City to adopt in support of cities for CDAW and its principles. And so today we want to focus on what this CDAW ordinance will be doing. The most important 4 things is it would codify the Chief Equity Officer position as an oversight personnel who would work directly with the Human Rights Commission to review practices and policies as it relates to gender equity. And it would establish every 5 years an intersectional gender analysis be done for the city. Also would recommend funding to support this intersectional gender analysis and its findings, and then require the city to have a compensation policy on equal pay for equal work. That's basically the what the CDAW ordinance that the Human Rights Commission as well as the Attorney's Office has proposed to you all, and we want to open the floor for questions.
Any questions from the council? Victoria.
Are the intersectional gender analyses, are they every 5 years in perpetuity, or do we see like after 20 years we would expect that the culture is adjusted such that it's a norm that we don't have to analyze every 5 years?
So We hope that it's eventually a norm, but as I understood it from working with Moana and the Human Rights Commission, it's every 5 years in perpetuity until it becomes a norm.
Mr. Chair.
Councilmember Fowler.
It's funny that Councilmember Petro Eschler said that, because when I said that, I was like, shouldn't it be every year? Which I wish it were the norm, but at this point, I'm wondering, but I'm serious, I'm wondering if we actually do need to look at it more often than every 5 years. And that's, I don't want to get in the way of anything, but it seems to be going in opposite directions right now. So I'd rather be looking at it more closely, more often, than saying everything's good in 5 years.
Mono.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering, question on this with, wondering whether CDOT is the place, or if the city has another place where we're looking at gender equity, not just between men and women, but transgender employees in our city family. Does that fall within the CDOT ordinance?
That would actually be a separate piece for us, but Councilmember Mono, I wanted to assure you that we are looking into those pieces. So you may get something very soon, either as an update from what departments are currently doing, or something that we will be bringing in the near future to address that.
Thank you.
Yes.
And, I'm sorry, I cannot see, so I'm just answering from here. I also wanted to add to that, Coletta, that in the definition that we have in the ordinance that was proposed, it does define women as self. I mean, I'll find the verbiage for you, Councilmember Mono.
Thank you, Councilmember Wharton.
I just want to thank everybody who's worked on this currently and over the years. This is a project that we started when I was on the Human Rights Commission, which was a long time ago, and so many times we've had a lot of delays and things, not placing the fault on anybody, but getting to this point. And so it's really exciting to we hadn't quite finished CDAW when I was off of the Human Rights Commission, so to be able to see it the ordinance come to fruition now as a member of the council is really exciting. And I know that it feels like generations of work went into this, so thank you for bringing it across the finish line, and I'm excited to have this formalized in an ordinance.
Thank you.
And no further questions from this end. Thank you very much, Coletta.
Thank
Darby, Moana, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And is it okay if we allow for any of the commissioners, if they want to say something very briefly?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Esther or Nicole, would you like to say something?
I'd like to acknowledge, can you hear me?
Yeah, speak up just a little bit.
Okay, Commissioner Russell, I'm sure you could say a few things on this. I'm just glad to see this at this point. A lot of people have worked on this, and it is a great addition to our city. And it's always nice to see Salt Lake City at the forefront of these things. So thank you all that participated. Thank you, council members, for promoting this as well. And most of all, to the commissioners that have had the chance to work on this. And Moana for being such a great manager for our commission and making sure that this moved along as it needed to be. So thank you all. Commissioner Russell.
Thank you, Chair Stoll. Since Commissioner Salazar Hall headed up our subcommittee, I think she could probably address the details of this most. I just kind of have the institutional knowledge and the history of working on it for 6 years. So I'll defer to Commissioner Salazar Hall.
Thank you. I think Councilmember Wharton is correct that this was generations in the making. And I think major acknowledgement needs to be given to retired Representative Rebecca Chavez-Hauk. This was her baby for a lot of years, and I don't think without her hard work we would be here today. So you're correct, Councilmember Wharton. We're seeing this through fruition. We're finally getting it across the finish line. And I do want to thank you for putting this on the calendar so that we can make this a reality.
Thank you very much across the board. This is fantastic work, and it takes a lot of effort. So appreciate your focus and your passion behind it all.
Thank you all. Have a good day.
Have a great day. Council, we're now moving on to item number 4, what you've been waiting for. Discussion on the general obligation bond and sales tax revenue bond. This is going to be fun. At the table, well, Ben's here with us and Allison. And we have Christina. I thought I saw Christina. I mean, Kristen. I saw Kristen here in a second. And Marina Scott.
Mr. Chair, I don't know if the plan is to have all of them at the table, but they are all certainly here to answer questions as they come up. And I believe in this case, the chair and vice chair have decided to start with council questions or ideas, thoughts. There have been many small group meetings and email questions and information shared with the council. We've included most of that in your packets for anyone in the public who wants to look. Check the agenda item for both this item and the next item, which is CIP, since there's some overlap in the two. So I believe we're starting with the general obligation bond conversation. Is that correct?
Thank you very much, Jennifer. So we've all had plenty of side small group meetings on these different bonds. And I want to just specifically just go over the general obligation bonds and look at that as just one group together. And I'm just going to open up the floor now. We've had a number of conversations. There's probably some that we're all fairly in favor of supporting, and others that we possibly want to adjust. But I'll open up the floor now to anyone who wants to take the first cut at some of their ideas.
Mr. Chair, you were talking about the GO bond, right? General obligation bond. So
Yes.
Upon research and talking to and learning about the history of Allen Park, I'd like to suggest to this body to reduce the amount from $9 million to half of that, to $4.5 million for that, and that will open that to discussion. But there is a lot of questions there, and it's a park that might need more, and we don't know really how to approach this project, and there's all sorts of needs across the city. So I wanted to start there with that reduction there, and then moving some of that money around, maybe to the 7 parks, increase that a little bit, the 7 neighborhood parks. Or we call it neighborhood parks or something different like that. And maybe increasing the amount for the fleet block with some of those savings from the Allen Park.
Thank you. Any other comments on that thought from Councilman Pui?
General support.
Okay. And Councilman Fowler, did you hear Councilman Pui was looking at the GEO bond, and Councilman Pui made the recommendation of reducing Allen Park to $4.5 million and increasing the neighborhood parks and the fleet box by that funding.
I appreciate that, and I am assuming that we're not necessarily making any final decisions on anything tonight. I want to have the conversation, but this is a proposal, not a final decision.
So this is probably the toughest part of this GEO bond conversation. You're correct that there's not a resolution for your approval on the formal meeting tonight. However, because the educational campaign is already so abbreviated, I guess would be the word, the sooner they can start that educational process, the better. And so if the council had a straw poll tonight in support of that, we would put a resolution on your next meeting to approve that. That said, legally speaking, you have until the end of August to, or I believe middle of August, the second meeting in August, to make that decision. I think that what we're trying to balance is that, and in talking with the administration, it seems that if the council didn't make that decision until the end of August final, it would be difficult to turn around the materials for that educational campaign. So fully recognizing that the council legally has more time to discuss this, there are some practical challenges about that educational effort if the council wanted to make substantive changes to the project list on that bond. So there's not a great answer. Apologies.
Hey, it's city government. There's never a great answer. But so as far as reducing Allen Park, I am actually fine with that. The reason I'm asking questions here is because in some ways, of course, I want to give money to Allen Park, but I still haven't heard any conversations. There's an entire group called the Friends of Allen Park, and when we purchased Allen Park, the idea was that there was also going to be some fundraising from the community and some outreach with the community, and I don't know that I have heard from, I've heard once from the Friends of Allen Park that were like, hey, what is the city planning on doing? Because that's not what we want over there. And I don't know that I've had any follow-up discussion or had any of those questions answered as far as what the neighborhood actually wants for Allen Park. I imagine $4.5 million needs to go for some maintenance of Allen Park and for what needs to, like, the sort of bare minimum in some ways. But I also want to make sure that the community that is there feels like they have, and that probably utilizes it more than anybody else really has a voice in this. So I'm actually fine reducing it to $4.5 million. I'm just wondering, do we actually need that full $4.5 million right now? Now, of course, I'm going to get about 1 million emails about how I'm not giving enough money to this certain area, but being pragmatic, there does seem to be other areas that this can go to when we know that we have some philanthropic ideas that coming out of Allen Park. So yes, I'm okay reducing it to 4.5. I'm just wondering if there's more, maybe. And Dan, I know that that area is close to your district as well, and you have some insight over there, so I don't know if you've talked to anybody from Friends of Allen Park.
I have not talked to the Friends of Allen Park because they've been, I think, slightly quiet on that issue. I know they've talked to Kristen. The one I do want to say that on the neighborhood parks, we're looking at neighborhood parks across all of them, and so increasing that funding to look at all the parks in the different districts, and maybe that. And again, I go, well, is that partially to Allen Park? Is that partially to some other different parks? And so that's not a specific line item, because that would be kind of more of a general line item.
Okay.
And that's where I was looking at the funding side of the house. And I wanted to eliminate the words, the 7, meaning just the neighborhood parks, because across the whole city.
But I think if I may, Council Chair, and Jen and everyone smarter than me can correct me if I'm wrong, but with the GEO bond, we can be somewhat vague, but not totally vague. And so if we say, like, parks throughout the city, yes, we can use parks throughout the city, but then if there's an expectation that there's a park in each district, like, I guess that I'd kind of like to know about as well. Do we leave that 1 per district, or at least 1 per district, right? Where at least then my constituents can also say, oh, okay, we've reduced some of Allen Park, but we're going to get something over at, like, just even finishing the trail, McClellan Trail, or something along those lines, right? But are we going to leave in some language that says at least, and maybe if there's leftover money, but Jen, I think we have to be somewhat specific, or at least there's an expectation there, I think.
I think that I think the council has approached it both ways. I think that it always helps to be specific if you want to see a specific outcome. So to the extent that you want the outcome to be able to say to each district's constituents, there will be at least some money spent in each district. I think it helps to say, I think that language is great to say at least one per district. And then the administration has flexibility in, maybe one district doesn't need $1 million, maybe one district only needs $500,000 and the other district needs $1.5 million, then it allows for that. Or one district has 3 small parks that need investments, but not one big park. And that may provide that flexibility, but still assure the outcome that the council's hoping. I mean, the council could issue an $80 million bond and just say for parks and public lands. But then you're not guaranteed to see this list of projects. And so to the extent that you absolutely want to see Glendale invested in, right, that's where it helps to be specific about that.
And sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but if I may just ask a question on that. So in being more specific, by law, it holds us accountable. Like we can't spend that anywhere else, right? And this is sort of educational.
That's my understanding. I think there are some ways to be a little flexible. Like I'm remembering back on the public safety building bond, the intention was for the public safety building, that one building that was built, but it said public safety facilities. And so there was a discussion at the time that if there was any money left over in the bond, it could be used for fire station facility or whatever. Now we didn't have any money left over, and so that resolved itself. But there's a way to be like a little bit general, and so that's where I think that line item about neighborhood parks is probably that flexible area. Most of the other ones, I mean, if you say Liberty Park playground, that feels pretty specific, where it would be spent on a playground in Liberty Park and not on like the aviary in Liberty Park or something.
Okay. So it's still a way to be flexible and accountable.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with suggesting a change, if that's a point to you, Councilmember Fowler, to say at least one per district and removing the word 7 and saying neighborhood parks at least one per district. And
I think that is helpful. Yeah, for sure.
And is it useful to specify between parks and trails, or parks or trails?
I didn't.
Parks, trails, open space.
Yeah, because I was, yes.
Let's modify it then to open space and more generic.
I think,
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Jen.
And Councilmember Wharton, then I'll go back to Councilmember.
So in my meeting with Parks, one of the main things that they wanted to do with Allen Park was, if we don't stabilize the lodge, we could lose the lodge. Just $4.5 million. Is it possible to do the stabilization with that amount of money?
Questions coming up.
Mr. Chair, while she's coming up, can I just clarify, Councilmember Pui, did you suggest a specific amount of that 4.5 to go to the neighborhood parks versus, was it Fleet Block?
Yes, so basically the 4.5 of savings is split between 3.5 to the neighborhood, open space, at least one per district, and then the remaining 1 million going to the Fleet Block.
Thanks, I knew you said it, I just didn't remember the numbers.
Okay, wait a minute. Sorry, now I have a question about that. So 3.5 divided among divided among 7 districts?
No.
Additional to the 7.
Right. But okay, but only okay.
And I think that the way the language reads
only an
now,
additional 500,000 per district then.
well, not necessarily, because I think the way the language reads now, it would not necessarily be an equivalent amount in each district.
Okay, an average of 500,000 per district.
Well, but that's why we changed the language to removing the word 7 and saying at least one. And this is the conversation about having maybe one district gets only 500,000 and another district gets 1.5. And this is a discussion that we could have at a later date. But the idea is to increase that, and then it gives us more flexibility for other parks and other projects in our districts, on open space, I guess.
Sorry, are you done, Chris?
Well, let's hear.
Thanks, Councilmember Warren. This is Kristen Riker, and I brought Kat Moss. She's the public lands planner with me to the table, and I think she can best answer the cost estimates for Allen Park.
Yeah, this is Kat Moss. Hello, thank you. Unfortunately, the timelines don't line up great. We're working on getting quotes right now for stabilization of the main Allen Lodge, and we just expanded scope to get cost estimates, so I can't say confidently what we would be able to get with 4.5 million, and with inflation and escalation, depending on when we would do that stabilization work, it would be difficult to tell, but we can do significant stabilization with the 4.5 million, at least on the Allen Lodge.
So it could be that it just gets it would still not be habitable?
Yes, and once I get that information, I can pass it along, but I don't have concrete numbers for you quite yet.
And when do you expect to have those?
We just are working on expanding their contract now, so within a month, potentially.
Okay, but we need to put this on the ballot, or decide if we're going to put this on the ballot in a month, like from Friday.
Would that be the priority then, is just stabilizing the house, or would we be looking at the riparian corridor or the floodplain restoration for Allen Park or any of the landscaping?
Well, I'm just wanting to know, my impression from the meeting was that the most urgent thing was stabilizing this lodge because we might lose it if we don't stabilize it. And it sounded like the other things were important things and things that we definitely want, but like if we don't do something about them in the next year, they're not going to go away. Is that correct? Okay. I don't disagree. I would love to spread that among the parks, and I would love to spread it among Fleet Block. I just want to know that that's this. When I think of it as averaging only another $500,000 per, if you spread that on average among the 7 districts, how much impact does that have? I don't even know what you can buy with $500,000.
So let me. I think this is I really appreciate this because just to put it in comparison, the administration is requesting Warm Springs to stabilize the ginormous building, $6 million, and to stabilize Fisher Mansion, $1.8 million. And I don't remember seeing the lodge, but the lodge is not the size of Warm Springs, and it's closer to the size of Fisher Mansion. So just from that point of view, and I'm not an expert, and I think, I believe that the administration can find money to stabilize some buildings and do some other improvements in there. And to the point about the neighborhood parks, potentially, and this is why we could potentially put some of that money back into Allen Park from the neighborhood parks. So it gives us a little more wiggle room. If it was enough, then it was enough, and then we can put it in a different project. So it gives us a little more flexibility.
It's a good point. I'm for it. But I have thoughts.
Sorry, I need to pause the conversation. We lost audio on WebEx, and so the people joining on WebEx can't hear I'm sorry to interrupt what was, I'm sure, a brilliant sentence, but I wanted them to hear it. So can we just...
Yes.
1 minute. Sorry.
Chris is a lawyer. He can pause on it.
Okay.
What?
Can you...
Hello?
Can someone tell me if you can hear now? Okay, they can hear.
Okay, so
Proceed.
as I was saying, a big blunder or policy question mark that I've had since I've been on the council is, do we continue with our strategy of bringing buildings up to just a stable condition but still have these buildings that are unusable, or is it better to put more money towards one building at a time, get them up to a condition where they're habitable? Because my feeling, and my hypothesis, I guess, and no one's been able to disprove it that I've heard so far, is that this strategy where we just stabilize buildings but they're still not usable is not serving us well. Because we have a handful of buildings that are not falling over on people, which is great, but we're still not confident about letting people in them, which is bad. And so to me, I don't feel like that's the best use of our assets. Of course, I have a favorite among the candidates. But as a whole, I think that we need to maybe test that hypothesis. And I think now might be the time to do it. And to the extent this allows us flexibility, I appreciate that.
Councilmember Fowler.
And thank you, Mr. Chair and Councilmember Wharton. And I do appreciate your hypothesis and the discussions that we've had about it. But I think in partnership with that is just that, partnership. I've been pushing for, when are we doing private-public partnerships? Why are we the only, I don't disagree. I think that the actual thing we need to be doing is saying, how much money is it going to take to get this to a usable state? Not habitable, because I don't know if we want people living in certain city buildings, but at least usable.
I'll stipulate to usable.
Thank you. But also then, we had this discussion a month ago about Fisher Mansion and the carriage house, where we know that the Jordan River Commission could potentially use offices, or maybe there's a thing there. And yes, they're a nonprofit, so it, kind of backfires a little bit to my argument. But creating some partnerships where we're not the only ones on the hook for these buildings that everybody cares about, and actually going out and doing this. So I don't disagree that I think your hypothesis is correct in that, do we wait? Do we put all of the money, all of the chips in right now on one building and come back to the next one next year and kind of do this domino-ish effect that way? Which, fine, I think that's probably great. But at the same time, what is it about creating a usable space if we don't have somebody using it?
No, and I agree. I would say, though, when I say let's get them to habitable, usable, I think if we're going to get a private partner to want to join us, we have to be able to say, look, we have a building that is up to a condition that we can take you in and let you look around, see it, and tell us what you think we could do with this, and as a partner.
And I think there's room for all of that, and there's
Yeah.
a skill for that, but I feel like we're not necessarily capitalizing on those partnerships either. So,
Yeah, and I want to.
maybe this is not the time or place to have that particular discussion, or maybe it is, right? Maybe Allen Park, we should just spend, I don't know, $60 million on Allen Park, and then say somebody can come in and use it, Allen Park. But I don't think that that's what we want either, nor do we need that, right? So it is sort of this balancing act, and I think that what I know from Allen Park is we know that we have the potential of having partners there that will help us raise money for it, get those partnerships created so that that park is usable for the area and the community that in a way that they want it used. That was a really confusing sentence, but.
I agree with everything you said.
So that's it. I'm for your straw poll there. I've had my discussion on it.
Okay. Any other comments, questions?
Wait, is there a straw poll?
Well, okay. Council,
Yes, it is a straw poll.
okay.
This is Councilmember Pui's straw poll.
Yes.
Okay.
Councilmember Morse.
I had some other comments before a straw poll.
Okay.
Do you have comments?
I have comments
Okay.
just in regard to what Chris brought up.
Okay.
Relating to not directly to Councilmember Pui's straw poll, but to historic buildings in general, which is that I agree with Chris's, or I am also very tempted by figuring out if Chris's theory is correct, that the current strategy is not necessarily serving us well. I also agree with Councilmember Fowler that we need to look at public-private partnerships for a lot of these. A lot of these buildings could be something that the private real estate market is really interested in helping us preserve if we, and I think that we have the ability to put a preservation easement on the buildings and then put them out to RFP and not continue to put city and taxpayer dollars into these buildings and still not use them. So rather than us stabilizing them, I think there are probably some cases where if we were to write down the cost of the land or something, that the private market would stabilize it. Of course, I would also prefer or request or require that we put those preservation easements in place so that we don't just give the building away and then it gets torn down. Yeah. But I would like to consider that as well. And I don't know of within any of the buildings that we're talking about, there are like kind of ideas of what they're going to be used for, but none of them seem like, oh yes, let's invest an unlimited amount of money of taxpayer dollars in that building in order to make it become that thing, which makes me feel like we need to have the private real estate market come in and help us figure out how to fund it and how to use it.
Okay, I never said endless amount of money. Okay, I never said that. We agreed on usable. That is the standard. Thank you.
Councilmember Faldemoros.
I think I like where this is going. I think I'm gonna defer to Councilmember Fowler and what the appropriate number is for this, for Allen Park, which is in your district, and it's the only ask that's the only proposal there. I definitely think it's kind of like what we need to figure out is, do we go with what Darren said? We are just going to put a preservation easement and then give it to someone and then we don't spend any money? Or we are at the table with the private groups that says, okay, we can invest this much as long as you invest this much. And that's where I'm at. I'm not sure what the right answer is. It could go both ways. We completely forget about it, or we actually invest and we have some teeth, down at the table, in the negotiation table. If we go with a public-private partnership, which I think, like Amy said, she has wanted it for a long time, and I have wanted it for a long time as well. We have to leverage those dollars out there that people haven't want to invest in our city. One more thing, Jen, I know Amy was talking earlier about, I want to make sure that I'm clear, with the bond money, Amy said, we use this money for maintenance, of Allen Park. And is this bond money like impact fees money that you have to create a new amenity to a park?
It's not about a new amenity, but it cannot be used for maintenance. I don't know if maybe Councilmember Fowler wants to clarify maybe what you meant was like smaller projects, and so not necessarily maintenance like mowing lawns.
Okay, I wanted to make sure that we're clear on that. So it's still amenities, and so that happens to the the neighborhood park thingies. This is not for to help. I don't know, to put it, to maintain something. It's to create something new in a park, or buy property to create a new park, which is not enough, obviously.
Or improvements to the park, right, Jen?
Yeah, not replacement or improvements.
Yeah, it could be just improvements to the park, but it's not a maintenance funding system, because there are no maintenance funding systems except the general fund, generally speaking, unfortunately. But we have legislators we can call. Yeah. there was something I just.
And then, Mr. Chair, I believe we have, the mayor has her hand up, but we can't, just so the mayor understands, we can't see hands raised in this format of WebEx. And so let me know by text if there's any other future point you want to comment. So
Councilmember Bono.
My really quick comment is just to Councilmember Valdemoros' point, it's probably a different answer for each building, but I think what I'm coming to the conclusion of is that the answer of just barely stabilizing but not using is probably not the correct answer in all cases, which is the only answer that we've been doing. So that may be the case in some. It may be completely privately funded. It might be a partnership in others. It's probably different for each.
And Mayor, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Council, for giving me a moment. A couple points. Councilmember Fowler's point, actually, you did just create a park maintenance fund as the fifth bucket of the Funding Our Future. Unless I'm mistaken, and that was changed in the budget and I missed it, but that is a new ongoing revenue source that we haven't had before for parks maintenance. Second, I wanted to mention that this escalation of the degree to which we are investing in these buildings that have been boarded is exactly for my intentions of bringing them to a place where we can explore public-private partnership, but not to the point where we've invested so much that their use is somewhat fixed. I think that how much we potentially bring to the table through a PPP on any one of those buildings or properties should be determined by what the public benefits will be through that partnership. And of course, that includes a tremendous exploration of RFIs and RFPs and seeing really what's out there in the private market and what we and then the council believe would be best to serve our public. So those aren't questions that we need to answer now, but this stabilization money is more than we've done, which is a bare minimum of literally just patching the hole in the roof when there's water flowing through it. We'd be bringing it up enough that we could have an actual conversation with the private market about what those benefits could be. So that's why my third point, which will be brief, is that we won't have another bond to consider in all likelihood next year. And that's why we are looking at multiple properties with this sort of once in a long season opportunity of bonding. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Pui.
No, I want to address a few of the things that I think is interesting for me, and I think it's important to mention. Obviously our city doesn't have a very good track record on stabilizing a building and then bringing it out to the community and saying, what do you want to see with this thing? We have plenty of unfortunate examples of that, and I'm hoping that while this conversation right now is on the GL bond, I'm hoping that we address some of these concerns in the sales tax bond related to maybe the Fisher Mansion or Warm Springs. I think that might be how you're winking at me right now. So I think that there is a way. Obviously, there is not unlimited amount of monies to fix all these buildings, but I think it's important to start somewhere. And there is a line in my mind of buildings that have been waiting for many, many years. And I'm not taking it away from Allen Park, but it is a recent purchase from this city. And there is other amenities that we've been sitting on for many, many years. And I'm hoping that we can move the needle on those soon, hopefully with the sales tax. So I hope that the next 4.5 million that Allen Park needs can be partially raised by the community or some of these interest people that did offer this at some point. I'm not saying that they're going to raise 4.5 million, but maybe they can contribute with $500,000. And so I think that there may be interest there, but it seems like we are just beating the same dead horse.
So you want to go ahead and repeat any other question? I was going to have Councilman Pui repeat his straw poll. Councilman Fowler?
I have just a very quick logistical question. And I'm looking at Jen and the analysts and Ben and Allison on this. And it's not, I mean, I know my nickname is Tiny Dictator, and I'm not trying to be a dictator here, but if we just sort of very generally say, here is $10.5 million for these neighborhood parks, one in at least one per district, parks, trails, and open space. The council then doesn't, I mean, the administration can take that money and do what they want with it. Okay. That's all. Yes, in case you didn't hear that.
Yeah, as long as it's one per district. I'm trying to think, maybe there would be a step where in order to spend that money, there would need to be a budget amendment, or at least it would have to be approved in the annual budget as the money comes through the debt service fund. So maybe there would be a touch point at which the council would have to authorize the expenditure of those GO funds, and maybe that would give like one more opportunity for the council to ask what the plans are for those. But it is on the spectrum of more council control, less council control. It's like in that middle.
Yeah. I don't think I've understand. So every year when we would, during the general budget session, when we're approving the debt service, that could be an opportunity to discuss what's happening.
That's sometimes an opportunity, depending on the timing. Sometimes it's a budget amendment because the GO bond money, as it flows through the city, where we collect it from property taxes and then pay the debt service, is a budget line. It's like its own budget outside of the general fund, but it is a budget that is approved by the council. So that first year that you're making those, you've already issued the bonds, and so you couldn't necessarily say, don't issue the bonds for those parks, but you may have an opportunity to say, what is your plan for spending that? And maybe we could talk to the attorney's office about some sort of reporting touch point after those bonds are issued, asking the administration to come back and report how those funds will be used. Maybe that would be an appropriate step, but Mark Cottrell, attorney, is joining remotely, and maybe what we could do is follow up with him and Marina after the fact, or Marina's coming up to the table. Maybe she has some information. And just, if the council's interested in knowing what those projects are before releasing the funds, is that what I'm hearing?
Yes,
you're wanting?
I mean, and again, I'm not totally trying to be a dictator here, but I think that there seems to be interest in where the money is going within these neighborhood parks within different council members' districts. And so, for example, the reason I'm thinking about it is a great example that Alejandro just brought up, Councilmember Pui, is that, lowering the Allen Park money to 4.5, but increasing that sort of vague neighborhood park, we could take some of that money and use it towards Allen Park. But again, maybe that's not necessarily what the district itself, my constituents want. And so then it just sort of got me thinking, but if we allocate this money in a bond, we say, okay, there you go, there's the money, have fun. Check you later when there's a ribbon cutting or something.
So just, my name is Marina Scott, I'm city treasurer. So just to clarify so the discussion today is probably mostly focused on the bond proposition language and election itself and what projects to put on the ballot. So let's say in November, the ballot proposition gets approved for 80 million. I'm just hypothetical. So, but then every time we issue a bond, we would go to the council for a briefing and a bond resolution approval. So you would have another discussion and another decisions to make what should be issued in the first bond issuance, in the second, or however many bond issuances will follow.
So, sorry, may I follow up with a question? And this is something I didn't realize because I don't know that, we did the sales tax bond, but that was strictly for street reconstruction, and so I don't know that I've thought about it quite
Actually,
as in...
that was a GO bond.
Oh, it was a GO
and
bond.
It's actually going to, the last sort of tranche of issuances is actually going to be on your agenda next, at the next council meeting. And I think that...
Council member amnesia over here.
You're fine. I think that's a great clarification, Marina. And I think that we've had differing approaches on those separate issuances because sometimes it's like a procedural matter. So in the case of the streets bond, it's very procedural because you guys discussed it and it's just a matter of how quickly engineering can spend the money because there's a spend down requirement. In the case of like the Leonardo, for example, that GEO bond was approved by the voters, but the council didn't want to issue the bonds until they confirmed that the private match was required. And so there were a ton of briefings before, and that the business plan was vetted. So there were a ton of briefings before the council issued those bonds. So actually, if the council wants that discussion, I think we can be more intentional about each time those bonds are issued, because 80 million likely wouldn't be issued all at once.
Got it.
To have that discussion with the council about, here's what we're going to do with this 20 million we're issuing now or 30 million we're issuing now.
And that can all come after a vote in November, like that discussion about how much involvement or non-involvement. Because like you said, I think there was already so much research done on all of the streets with the priority of the streets that when the 80 million was passed, it was kind of like, well, we already know what priorities there are, and you'll get to as much of it as you can with the money that we have, right? But this seems a little more vague and volatile in the sense that there's 7 of us that may want more to say, but that can come after it's approved in November. Okay. Thank you, Marina. Thank you,
I
Jen.
have a question for clarification on that.
Thank you,
So,
Marina.
Jen, at some point, I remember that so we can be somewhat vague, but also we have to be somewhat specific, because once we go to the public and say, this is the list, and to the bondholders, this is the list of the things that we want to do, then we cannot come back and change what we,
Right. You can't, I guess it depends on the definition of change. You can, for example, the regional athletic complex that was approved by the voters talked to the voters about a certain number of fields and a certain number of sport opportunities. By the time the bonds were actually issued, construction costs were double. And so what was actually built was about half of what was told to the voters. So in a sense, it was changed. However, it fit within the legal parameters because you still built what you told the voters. You still built at least as much as you could
Right.
of what you told the voters you could. Now, could you have changed that money from a soccer field to a fire department building? No. It's like, so in these cases, you couldn't change it from a Liberty Park playground to the Tracy Aviary. But you could change it to say, if the playground is now twice as expensive, we're going to build half of what a smaller playground than we envisioned, or something like that.
So in the case of Allen Park, we said, okay, we want $4.5 million for Allen Park to do stabilization. And then all of a sudden, later, we are like, we don't want to do stabilization anymore because we found private money. Then can we use that money for something else?
I think that's probably where finance and maybe the bond council would advise to just say Allen Park.
Yes.
And don't specify Allen Park stabilization.
Okay.
Yes.
So that way it could be spent on stabilization in Allen Park, or it could be spent on something else in Allen Park, as long as what the outcome you want is that money is spent somewhere in Allen Park.
On Allen Park, okay, all right. I want to make sure that.
Do you have a?
Yes, okay, my straw poll, I'm going to restate
go
the
ahead.
straw poll. So to change the Allen Park amount to 4.5 million, to change the 7 neighborhood parks, 1 per district, to say neighborhood open space, at least 1 per district, to $10.5 million, and to change Fleet Block Park from 5 million to 6 million.
Can I have a friendly amendment? That it's a neighborhood parks, trails, or open space, because we have legal definitions for each of those things and ordinance definitions for each of those things.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, that was the straw poll on the, any questions? Thumbs up for the straw poll? I have 7 thumbs up unanimously. Thank you very much. Great discussion on the GEO bonds.
Should we straw poll the rest of the items on the, or we should
No,
assume that?
that was just the GEO bonds So we, oh, yeah, we're
Was
gonna keep
just
this-
one
the rest of-
issue on the GeoBond that took an inordinate amount
That was
of time.
that was all of GeoBond.
So we approve everything but
Oh.
those changes, or we just change
No, you're probably right. So I would say that we needed a separate straw poll that would be
the rest of
the rest stays the same.
I continue to be very uneasy about all of Glendale being on something left to voters. Even, I'm completely fine with the amount, but even if the GEO bond should not be approved by voters, I would prefer that we have money readily accessible to move forward, if not complete it, by reallocating it to the sales tax bond. I have tried to get my brain and my heart into a place where I'm comfortable with this, but I am not comfortable with all 27,000 being in the GEO bond.
Million.
Or 27 million.
Councilmember Fowler.
So couldn't we, I mean, I would straw poll that we keep everything with the changes that Councilmember Pui said, then we straw poll yes to the rest of the GEO bond, and then talk about the sales tax bond. And I would agree with Councilmember Petro Eschler that we figure out where to put at least some amount of money to Glendale in case the GEO bond doesn't pass. But I would want to keep it there where it is with 27 million in case it passes, and then put at least something to it in the sales tax bond in case it doesn't pass. Because, and the sales tax bond, I think we could be a little bit, in some ways, a little more vague of like a park or something, right, that goes there. But I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm saying let's cover both bases.
Yeah, my only question then would be to parks, is 27 the total that we project we need for it? Is this
like
just
800 million.
We always need just a few million more. But if we did something like that and added like a few extra million on the sales tax bond, are we just enhance things a little more?
So I think that they're in the middle of their planning process for that, and so it's probably hard to say. I think they're coming to the council at some point in the next couple meetings to give like a midpoint update on that. But in my observation, working here for 18 years, things are always more expensive than you sort of initially think they're going to be. And so, and especially because you are building that park from scratch, you're not improving an existing open, improved facility. I don't want to speak for Kristen. Go ahead.
Kristen.
You're absolutely right, Jen. What we have right now is a vision plan. And so there isn't construction documents to give you cost estimates. We estimated 27 million would give us a really good, significant impact in that park. We don't know if we could build everything at this time. The other option I just wanted to throw out there is impact fees that the council has control over to allocate however the council decides could be thrown out. So just another thought.
So there are other options on top of the 27, but I think there's a strong support for leaving that 27 in here and possibly looking at other options for the other areas. So I'm going to look for...
I could concede that, but I don't feel at ease until I see it and it's allocated.
But I mean, I'm concerned with your, I'm not concerned. I think, I'm not sure I fully understand the concern of putting money both in the GEO bond and in the sales tax bond.
Just one certain and one isn't, right? So
I know, but if we do both, then at least we
yeah,
have
that's what. I concede it. I just want to make sure that I don't want us to lose that thread, because right now I have no assurances. If I say if I straw poll it,
Got it.
like
Okay.
until I see it there, that's
Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
So, Mr. Chair, we kind of, according to what staff is telling us, we kind of have to decide on the GEO bond ASAP so that we can advertise for it. Yeah. So we keep that in there. But if that fails in November, if the voters do not approve that, we still have options past November to fund Glendale Park, right? Like we have, we can issue another sales tax bond. We can also use our parks impact fees or our general CIP allocations. So I agree with you, Councilmember Peter Eschler, that I see the optics of putting the entire park in something that we don't know the outcome. of, and that's scary, but I guess I'll at least give my informal sort of nod that like that is an important thing to, I believe everyone on the council. So if that geo bond were not to pass, I am supportive of looking for other sources for that park. Absolutely.
So I look for a straw poll on the other remaining items for the.
Just for the geo bond.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, just one more clarification. So I understand the concern of Victoria. I think I feel a little bit the same way, like what if? Is it worth talking about, like allocating some extra CIP now towards Glendale, like impact fee CIP, in our discussions, like now?
Well, we're going to discuss CIPs after the sales tax bond, so we can discuss it at that point.
Okay, so I would be,
Yeah.
I would be happy to use some of those funds to ensure that we have some, some availability if the geo bond doesn't pass. Okay.
Okay, so I look for a straw poll.
I would like to straw poll the geo bond and to keep all the other items as they are recommended by the administration.
Okay, the straw poll on the floor. Any questions about the straw poll on the floor? Thumbs up on that straw poll. I have 7 thumbs up. That passes unanimously. Now moving on to the sales tax. Sales tax bond. And again, I think there's been some great discussions in small groups on this different sales tax. And I think there's a number of these line items on the sales tax bonds that the majority of us agree to. And then there's a couple that that need some discussions and possibly further discussions. Now, on the sales tax bond, we can pass this at any time. And we can also break up the sales tax bond into more than one sales tax bond. And we can add on other sales tax bond or other items if we want to, or a sales tax bond. In this case, these are items that were requested from the administration. And I just open up the discussion at this point to the general stuff. Councilmember Victoria Peters.
Can I just ask a clarifying question about, is there any sense of urgency if we do break it up into separate ones regarding interest rates or any, is there a reason why we should be doing it more quickly?
I think that everyone would say that doing it more quickly is more financially advantageous. I think the problem is that there's a lot of questions about some of the projects that cannot be answered now. And some of the projects are urgent. We've heard from the administration that the central plant electrical transformer and backup generator is especially anxiety producing. And so I think that there's an interest just operationally to get some of the projects done. And so that was the sort of best of 2 imperfect options, I think, that we've kind of landed around.
And one of the ideas is that there is an idea out there that we split this up at least into 2 bots. And because there's a couple that they don't need 8 months of research, but they may need a month and a half or 2 months. And it'd be nice to get some of these things started now, especially for the engineer side of the house. So I'm going to open up the floor to discussions. And I think Councilmember Romano, did you have a?
No, yeah, Jennifer, and you said what I was going to say about the urgency of some of them and the ability to wait on others.
Councilmember Valdemars.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask the administration because there are some projects that could wait for a month and a half or 2 until we have more solid numbers, if that's realistic, really, if that's truly realistic that we can get more itemized numbers on the construction costs that you anticipate for certain projects in this list, so that we know, we're confident that the money that we're asking will be sufficient or not.
I think that I'm not trying to answer for the information or for the administration, so please, anyone pop up. But some of the questions are actually council member questions. I'm thinking particularly Warm Springs and reevaluating the entire kind of reuse plan of that building and maybe asking the administration to go out to an RFP. So I don't think 2 months is necessarily when we would have all of the information, but that's when the council could kind of reconvene on some of those conversations and give the administration some more specific asks on those items. Because I think the proposal, the questions relate to how to get both of those buildings, both the Fisher Mansion and the Warm Springs Plunge, to some place beyond just stabilized, and whether or not there are private dollars that could be part of that. I don't think you know that until you actually go out to the private market, which I don't think could be done in 2 months. So maybe it's a 6 months time frame. I don't know.
Okay.
But one piece of information, I don't know if it's helpful. There is no limitation to how many sales tax bonds you issue. It's just ability to pay, and it's efficiency for cost of issuances. So if in 2 months you have a lot more clarity on one of the projects that's been waiting, you could issue a bond for that project. And then if in 6 months you have additional clarity on some of the other projects that are waiting, you could issue a bond for that project. Now, again, it's ability to repay. And so making sure to check in that the debt service is coverable. You're not limited by issuing 1 or 2 or 3 bonds. It's just about paying them and then recognizing that there's a cost each time you go out to the bond market. Like there's a cost of issuance. So you do gain efficiency by reducing the number of bonds that you issue. But in some of the questions that council members have been sending about some of those projects, I don't know that those questions are able to be answered in a month or 2.
You know, because I know there are thank you for that. And I wish we had those before, to be honest with you, like when there's a proposal that we had a little bit more of itemized, because then we are here kind of like between a rock and a hard place, right? Like trying to decide what to do, but we are not sure with the numbers. There's questions, especially for Pioneer Park. We don't have like a solid answer. I know, you know, Pioneer Park has been waiting for a long time beyond our time. Anybody here for like a good final investment, right? Like a good number, and then we're moving on. But some of the council members have questions like, what are we getting for $10 million? And it's not clear yet. You know, obviously I support the $10 million, but I would like to also have that itemized, you know, number so that we can make a decision sooner than later when we're talking about it, when people are into bonds, into, you know, what's best, what's most effective, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, some thoughts.
Councilmember Wharton.
And so, just really explicit from the beginning, I do not mean this in an accusatory way at all. But I've been asking the question about Warm Springs for like years. Why will we be able to get an answer now when we haven't been able to answer this question in several years? Especially now that like inflation is so, you know, I think the motion speaks for itself.
Yeah.
So it just feels like there's always going to be reasons to wait and to wait for more information. I would like to make our decisions quickly because I think we should tell, like, the residents should have this information quickly. But I also know that, like, you know, we don't know what we don't know. I just want to know, why should I be more confident that we're going to have a better answer in 3 to 4 to 6 months when it's been years?
Councilmember Fowler.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Brian.
Oh,
you're fine.
What's the answer? Okay.
I don't have an answer, but and if you need a specific answer to that, I'll wait.
No, go ahead. Well, I do want an answer, but not from. I wasn't asking for one from you. If anybody knows, anyone's free to answer.
I'm waiting to see if somebody has an answer. Mine's on the same line as yours. I just didn't know if somebody had an answer to your specific question.
I don't see any hands up or here, so go ahead with your comment first.
So I was just thinking about this, and I know this is a little bit crazy, but welcome to my brain. when we did the sales tax increase, I guess it was an increase. Sorry, I'm thinking out loud now. Let me ask this question and it will help me process my brainstorm idea. With this sales tax bond, do we also have to be as specific as we are with the GEO bond as far as where we're spending money?
I think you have the same options before you as you do with the GEO bond, where you could be specific if you wanted a specific outcome, or you could be general to allow some flexibility. I think that, in fact, we even floated that as an idea. You could combine the funding for both historic structures and then have the administration come back. I think what we as staff were realizing is that there's not enough funding.
Sure.
For what the council was asking about. And we didn't know how to get the council an answer for how much funding would be needed for the ideas that were coming up. And so, yes. So the answer is you could be as specific or as general as you wanted.
So I was just sitting here sort of brainstorming this a little bit, and there are a lot of questions I think that council members have. I won't speak for everybody else that I have. Like, of course, I want ballpark improvements, but what does that mean and look like? Of course, I want, Warm Springs, but obviously there's questions there, or Fisher Mansion. There's some of them that's pretty, necessary in some ways, but couldn't we, and I don't want to throw a total wrench on things, but similar to how we did the sales tax increase, and we just said, here are the 4 areas, now 5, because we just approved that, but here are the 4 areas that we are going to spend these tax dollar monies on. These are very specific to these 4 areas. They're not very specific to a project necessarily within those 4 areas, because we'll have administration come back and say, here's how we spent your funding the future dollars, or here's how we're spending or want to spend your funding our future dollars in the next budget or whatever. Is there a way to do that almost with the sales tax bond, where we say these are all going towards parks improvements and facility improvements on parks or whatever, come up with the language there, where then we're not necessarily deciding that today or tomorrow or next week that Pioneer Park needs $1 million, $0 million, or $10 million, but we're saying, we know that this sales tax bond is going to this, and we're going to have sort of that same very transparent process, similar to how we do funding our future dollars with this sales tax bond, where then we have sort of a reporting requirement from the administration coming up with, here's what we want. There's Ben would have to make the sheet even bigger and add another column during the budget for sales tax bond monies. But something along would it be possible to do something like that if we wanted to?
I think that would, yes, you could. I think that it would inadvertently reduce council control. It would tie your hands in ways that maybe you don't feel comfortable. I also think that there are some projects on this list that are oddly specific, like radio towers, that I don't know. And then railroad quiet zones. I don't know how you, there's a couple of specific projects and then others that are, I don't know. I'd have to think more about that. I don't know. And
what I'm looking at is, I understand your position there, but I also don't want to kind of kick the can down the road there. And I think as I look at this, there's 2 areas. There's 3 areas that have that we have concerns: Pioneer Park, Warm Springs, and the Fisher Mansion. The other items, I think there's fairly a good sense that we should fund those, and we should move ahead with them and allow the administration to move forward with the projects there. And then we look at the other 3 that says, hey, these 3 have too much question marks across the board. And whether we add money to the sales tax bond and increase the sales tax bond, we reduce the sales tax bond, but we have some discussions there. The private public partnerships, sale, lease land, all that stuff. So I see that as being separate. Then you could possibly may adjust that, and you could actually then add a project to it if you want to add something to it.
I don't disagree that there do seem some that are very specific, and it's kind of like, okay, we just need to get these done. Like and it reminds me a lot of the street reconstruction. Like we just have to reconstruct streets. And so I don't mind at all taking out those three and then adding Glendale as a fourth to that, right? Of saying, but then I do think that maybe that's where we could have that discussion of, is this a little bit more vague with some flexibility, but with some legislative intents or some reporting requirements? But I'm just throwing stuff out there.
And I think your point about adding,
Why not?
because if you just adding some money to the sales tax bond doesn't really add to the debt service payment.
I mean, it adds some. I
But
think
it's-
that depending on how much money the council wanted to add to it, we could calculate with finance how much money it would add to the debt service payment.
Councilmember
So what-
Fowler, you identified 3 that you're okay. I have 5 that I'm looking at that feel like they're urgent, that need to go without Glendale. Which 3 are you looking at?
I said there were 3 that were not as urgent.
Oh, okay.
Everything else seemed urgent. There were 3 that
Thank
were
you.
not.
I'm with you. All right.
Would it be okay to go line by line and do a straw line by line?
What if Mr. Chair, if I suggest a straw poll to approve as recommended the city cemetery, 600 North Corridor transformation, radio towers, central plant electrical transformer upgrade, and emergency backup generators. I need to practice some of those words. The West Side Railroad quiet zones. Right there.
How about the
On the ballpark improvements, I'm sorry.
And how about the urban reutilization?
Oh, the urban
And Smith Ballpark?
reutilization, equipment, and storage additions.
Okay. So
one is
the straw poll on the floor was all on the sales tax bond except Pioneer Park improvements, Warm Springs, Historic Plunge, Fisher Mansion.
I have a question.
Councilmember Romano.
I should know this, so hopefully staff can give me like a 1-sentence answer. The 600 North Corridor transformation, is that just the typical complete streets transformation, or is there something special about that? Because it feels like a large number, and I think we already have other money allocated to that, but is that just it's a big road, or?
It's a big road and it's a big project, and it's more than the typical complete streets transformation. It does include linear park. It includes enhancements for the frequent bus route that runs every 15 minutes on there. So it's complete streets plus more on top of that.
Got it. Thank you. That answers my question.
Clarifying questions too, and I may have missed it, but what will we get for the West Side Railroad quiet zones? Like, are we trying to match something with UP or whoever owns those lines? Are they willing to do certain things? Like, can we leverage that money with their investment as well?
The specific changes would be to 3 at-grade crossings where city streets and the railroads intersect. All 3 would need to be improved. It's mostly safety improvements. The result for the neighbors is they won't have train horns blaring in the middle of the night, because without those safety improvements, the trains must blare their horns per federal regulations.
And if I could add, this was an original RDA project. Probably 15 years ago, the RDA started putting away funds for it. And because those funds were inadequate, I think there were like $3 million set aside for it, and we knew the project would be closer to 6 or 7. When the council did the reallocation of funds in the RDA, this was one of those accounts that was reallocated to housing. That said, separately, the Inland Port has been working with the railroads to consolidate train traffic in other areas of the city. So I think there is an opportunity to partner these funds with other activities that are going on, but it's absolutely a neighborhood quality of life problem right now that has been on the city's radar for 20 years. And hasn't moved.
Let me add this to this. This is such an important project, and to those people that live literally 30 feet from the train, and the train is very loud. I am not going to talk about certain company that runs the trains, but they're not very interested in doing these improvements themselves. They have no interest in doing these things, and it falls into the municipalities to do this, unfortunately. I wish there were better partners and better neighbors, and some of them have told us that they've been here before us, but the truth is that the impacts are great, and this will make a big difference.
Great.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you for that. Another question is on the improvements on the Smiths Ballpark. What are we getting for $3 million?
I know Lisa Schaefer was online remotely. There's a contractual obligation related to this item, but maybe Lisa, could you explain that in a little more specificity? Sorry.
Lisa, thank you.
Sure. Hi, council members. Thanks for giving me a chance to speak with you remotely. I appreciate the opportunity. Yeah, we under our current lease agreement, the city is contractually obligated to make all baseball-related upgrades up to major league standards. It's called a player development license list, and so there are certain points that we have to obtain every year to keep the ball field, the facility, up to those standards. And this $3 million is to meet those obligations by 2024.
Okay. And last question on the 600 North Corridor transformation. Was that not part of our funding our future money at all in the street reconstruction that Amy was talking about?
It was not included as part of the GEO bond, since that was more focused on reconstructing existing streets instead of providing like a neighborhood transformation. I believe the conversation started with Councilmember Rogers, if I'm right, and maybe Councilmember Wharton, I think because it extends into Marmalade as well, as a result of constituents talking about the negative impacts of heavy traffic on that street. Transportation Division has been managing it, and I believe some of it is being funded with, is it the county quarter cent?
Yeah, there are several funding sources. The county quarter cent, there's some funding our future. There's also some state money that's involved. I don't know all the specifics, but there's like a dozen different funding sources that are all feeding into the project.
And it's also in response to a lot of the deaths on that road. That's one of the deadliest roads, if not the deadliest road in the city.
Okay. Well, just final comments. I think the straw poll is to include everything but Pioneer Park,
Springs and
Warm
Fisher.
Springs, and Fisher Mansion, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. The only worry I have about separating this, is that we might lose momentum on wanting to do this, these three projects. And Councilmember Puy was, convinced me that it's really important that we invest as much as we can on Fisher Mansion, for example. Like, not just the minimum, like, let's go all out as much as we can, not unlimited, but as much as we can to make this usable and not just stabilizing it. And I think that's important to me that we bring it back. And I'm not sure if we're going to bring it back or there's going to be interest on top of Pioneer Park. Councilmember Puy also mentioned to me that, we're all kind of tired of Pioneer Park. We want this, we want this to happen. We want something to happen big, and we're moving on into the future and not talking about not about funding more in Pioneer Park, but talking about the public-private partnerships, the maintenance, the programming. It's a great park, revenue, sales, we pay our bonds back. This is great. So those are my only worries onto moving them out. Like, can we put ourselves a timeline? Like Councilmember Petro said, we did this with conditional uses for the shelters, that we had a timeline to come back and talk about this and make a decision on yes or no and the conditions. Can we do that here as well? Because I feel like if we can commit to talk about this and take a hard look at these three issues, and that we will try to invest as much as we can, I'm excited to support the straw poll. But if we are going to talk about it later and kind of forget about it and then life gets in the way and somebody doesn't like Pioneer Park, somebody doesn't like the Fisher Mansion, somebody doesn't like the Warm Springs for some reason, and then we end up with less than what's proposed today, which is generally not that much in the realm of all of these things. It's only $10 million for District 4 and, and et cetera, et cetera. There's little things here and there that these asks are not that big to me. If instead I'd rather go for it now instead of later before we forget.
Councilmember Fowler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I understand your concern, but I really think that we, as council members, are the ones that can hold ourselves accountable for what we talk about and what is a priority to us. And that I do think that we can come back and say, and there's money in impact fees, there's money in CIP next year, there's budget money, there is a time to have, I'm fine having a deadline of saying, let's come back and do this. Totally fine with that. But I do have a lot of questions on these things. And to be quite honest, I don't know that I feel comfortable allocating $10 million to Pioneer Park right now. And that is a struggle for me. And whereas maybe I do want to say, let's put another $5 million into Warm Springs, but what does Warm Springs look like? What do we want with that project? It's a good discussion that I think it was me, Darren, was it you, Dan? That we had a discussion in having built or trying to build a relationship with our native people and the people that had this, that was their land before us. This is sacred land to them. So what kind of discussion are we having about that? And are we going to just put $6 million to stabilize it, which is great and fine, and maybe we are just stabilizing it. But I kind of want to have some answers on where are these projects coming from, and these partnerships coming from, and these discussions coming from, and why there are other stakeholders besides us and besides just the people that live around the area or the business owners that are around the area that should be involved in some of these discussions, in my opinion. And so that's why, for me, putting it off a little bit and saying, I don't want to hold up this stuff. And I do want to have money come into these parks. And we can issue a sales tax bond anytime we want. And no, it's not fun to do it, but we can. And I think that these are important things for our city, and open space and accessibility to open space is incredibly important, but so is making sure that all of the stakeholders are involved in the discussions and not just some of the stakeholders. And so some of these things that we have brought up, I think in putting this discussion off a little bit, we kind of, in some ways, maintain a little bit of leverage regarding that conversation, saying, we've talked about private partnerships with Fisher Mansion. What are we doing to actually do it?
Same with
right?
Pioneer
And
Park,
so I think if we say we're having a deadline to have this conversation in 6 months, and we're kind of giving administration staff, us, all of that, a little bit of time to wrap our heads around it and to have that discussion, then we come back to it. Whereas the other things are just like, again, I keep coming back to this, but it's road reconstruction. Like, it needs to be done. We know it needs to be done. It makes sense if we have if we have an electrical transformer upgrade and emergency backup generators. That seems like we should probably get that taken care of so our city isn't dark for, like, I don't know, ever or something, right, while we try to fix it. So there's some of those things that are just incredibly practical, and other things that I know are a priority and we want, but there needs to be, but in my personal opinion, needs to be further discussion on it. And then I also just would say, like, as a sort of just another asterisk, is that if we do support the straw poll that was made, that it's not just those 3 projects, but that we add Glendale to the discussion there. That would be like sort of a friendly to the straw poll.
Yeah.
And I'm amicable to the suggestion there. I don't know if there is more questions on this.
I think Councilmember Mono.
To clarify Amy's amendment, Glendale gets added into with the 3 that we're still discussing, not to decide today. Okay.
Councilmember Victoria Petro.
I have a hard time justifying the urgency of the urban wood reutilization unless we have some sort of condition saying that it has to be profit or revenue generating as quickly as possible. and really look at how we're going to maximize and leverage that in our city. But then the second thing is this cemetery investment reflective of the appropriation we didn't receive, and are we going to be going for another appropriation to supplement this, or is this the totality?
Yes to the first part, no to the second. This is, as part of the lobbying strategy, when we were trying to do this last year, we were saying that we were committing a certain amount in the 2023 budget, or bonds. And so this is that amount. And then we didn't know if we were going to be going back to the legislature to ask for money this year, but some legislators have suggested that we should, and other people in the community who would be really helpful. So I think that we definitely, so we're restarting those efforts. And in the meantime, the Friends group has applied for some grants, private grants, that we would just add to it. So their strategy is to kind of build the snowball and have that going into this fall and then the legislative session for 2023.
I think the total estimate for cemetery projects was what, like $35 million. And so there's no limit to the needs. The one asterisk I have to what Councilmember Wharton was saying was that the legislative subcommittee hasn't been able to meet yet. And so they're meeting in the next couple weeks to discuss what the city is going to be asking for. Yeah.
Councilmember Wharton again with the unlimited requests.
Councilmember Baltimore.
This is going to benefit all of you someday. So, thank you. It is not, that doesn't matter. If you want a nice headstone.
Councilmember Baltimore.
I do appreciate that coming from both Petro and Wharton. With the wood one, I do, and I think I sent you guys an email with some of my thoughts on that. I do think Pui was explaining to me what we're going to do with that, the wood chips, that reduces funds from the city. So we'll produce our own wood chips to use in our parks and areas that we did it too. But I think also, because it's kind of like a good number, like I always look at, maybe we also becomes a little bit of seed money for those wood entrepreneurs out there and wood businesses that could actually, have a wood shop, whatever, we store the wood that we collect. And maybe that's another way to create some businesses and extra jobs for the artists out there that do wood. I'm not sure if that's possible, but it looks substantial. Like maybe it is a double whammy there that we can do. Who's in charge of that? On the lobbying that Chris was talking about, that it's being done at the legislature level, I feel like there's interest, and we have constituents that are interested in lobbying for certain parks in our city. We had that interest for Pioneer Park as well. And whether it is that they lobby the legislature for, the Central Park in Salt Lake City or in the capital city, or we do the public-private partnership like ASAP, I'm interested in really talking, like getting those done, those processes, so that we can actually come up with a number where we say the city is going to do this as long as you do this, and here's the process to do it. Thank you for, donating the money, and here's, this is what we're going to do. With all of that said, I still think Pioneer Park is somewhat deserving of the one last investment, because it's the biggest park that District 4 has, and District 4 is the fastest growing district in the city, with the least access to open space in the entire city. And it's very highly unlikely that even with the parks, trails, and open space, with at least one per district geo-bond thing that we did, that we are going to be able to buy another piece of land to make another park in District 4. Like with the prices, it's really unrealistic to think that we will be able to do that. And so to me, giving that last push to Pioneer Park with as much as we can is what I would like you guys to consider and ponder and see if that's something that we can do. We can leverage those funds maintenance and for, and for programming with private partnerships, but also understanding that it's not an investment just in the park per se, it's an investment to generate more revenue sales overall in the area that will pay back the bond that we're talking about. This area is already kind of happening naturally because it's downtown. So I feel like we rely a lot on certain projects to generate those revenues so that we can pay back what we're trying to get for other areas don't generate as much. I don't know if that makes any sense. So this one's kind of like an easy way to make sure that we'll have the money to pay for the bonds. It's just one park out of the whole, the city. So that needs that last boom.
All right.
And we're moving on. Thanks.
Thank you. So we have a straw poll on the table here from Councilmember Pui. And any questions on that straw poll? Councilmember Wharton.
I would feel more comfortable if we gave ourselves a target to revisit the conversations, and we can push that back. But what worries me is we're not always going to be. I mean, there are lots of signs that the economy is slowing down, and I don't want to. I don't want us to have a misperception in our minds that just because we can issue sales tax bonds at any time, which we've heard a lot today, that means it's always going to be a good time to issue sales tax bonds. Those are two really different things.
Chris, I can't really hear you. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. So just because we can issue sales tax bonds at any time doesn't mean that any time is a good time to issue sales tax bonds. So I would like to have some, more than just an expectation that we can get the information that people, council members feel that they need to make their decisions on these, and not have it be kicking the can, because the risk is that all of the numbers could go up while the momentum for everything could go down. And I would be real mad about that. I would say, yeah. Thank you.
Can I ask a follow-up question, Mr. Chair? How quickly after the council makes a decision on the sales tax bond, are we able to see sales tax bond money?
At least a few months. Sometimes it can be closer to half a year, but it does take at least a few months to go through all of the bond issuing steps.
Okay. And we've heard a lot about the need and urgency of at least a couple of these, particularly, again, I go back to the transformer upgrade and emergency backup generators. Is there an answer? Ideally we would have done this, I don't know, years ago, right? But is this something that needs to happen tomorrow? Again, ideally we would have done it years ago, but
I'm waiting for Lisa Schaefer's video to turn on, because I think she would probably be
Right.
better at answering that.
Good idea. Lisa?
Hi, Councilmember Fowler, would you mind repeating the question? Is it about a specific project on the list or all of the projects?
yeah, sorry, nope, it's just about the transformer upgrade and emergency backup generators.
Yes, we're on borrowed time with the transformer. We're on borrowed time. We don't know, right? And hopefully we won't experience, a catastrophic failure of the transformer. But this planning for and budgeting for and trying to hope for this transformer replacement has been on this list for, I want to say 2.5 years. And so we're definitely on borrowed time. We also, keep in mind, have lead times for ordering of the equipment, RFP, getting the contractors on site. All of those things take time, and Ben Ludke has a really nice, email outlining all of those contingencies that need to be in place for the transformer itself to actually be installed. Thanks to Jorge and his team providing that information. But we're close to 100% design, and we'd be able to kick off construction pretty quickly. But we don't know how much time we have before the transformer will no longer function.
Okay, thank you. And I appreciate that because I recognize what Councilmember Warden is saying and thinking of some sort of compromise where maybe we don't straw poll taking out those 3 projects today, but we say we're bringing all of the projects back in a future discussion because legally we can, as was mentioned, do this at any time. Whereas the GEO bond, we straw polled because there's sort of a time frame on it. And so recognizing that like maybe issuing several sales tax bonds in 1 year or within 18 months is not what we want to do, but we say this continues to be on the agenda and we are giving maybe ourselves a deadline to within the next 2 months to approve the sales tax bond in one way or another, but not straw polling things today so that council members can get some of these questions answered regarding those 3 projects that we continue to have questions on, 3 to 4 projects, depending.
I like the idea there, but I would really like to get some of this stuff over the goal line now, get this in. I know it's a couple months, but that couple months can give that couple months for these projects and then allow us to, because we don't have discussions on the rest of the projects, let's make the decisions. Let's go out with the bond market now for those, and then we can have a future bond market for the next 3 projects. And we can make that decision between now and November, and the sooner we pressure the administration, we can get there.
We don't have to make a decision before November on this one.
But it'd be nice to make a decision now on these other items, on the top 7 besides the 3.
No, and I understand that. I'm just saying, I understand what you're saying. I'm just trying to think of a compromise that Councilmember Wharton is saying as well, is like, and Councilmember Valdemoras, are we going to come back and have this discussion? And then if we come back and have this discussion, are then at that point we're going to be like, we really don't want to issue another sales tax bond, right? Which I think, not trying to womansplain what Chris said, but that seems to be what I'm hearing as far as like what you said, right? Is that like not always is it a good time, even though it's a we can time. Mm-hmm. And so my thought is just to hold off a little bit instead of a straw poll today, to hold off a little bit. So if there are discussions that need to happen for next week even, and have a straw poll next week on these items, but so that we can have some of those questions answered.
What if I suggest to put a deadline to come back? And
I think I understand the comments from Councilmember Fowler, but I don't think we want to push and kick this can down the road for these other projects. We can get that going now on as far as the bond market is concerned. There takes some process there on that bond market. In these other 3 projects, we're not going to have a decision in a week or 2 weeks on these other 3 projects, and we can hold off on that thing. And it is up to us to make that call. And we have enough pressure here from, I think, a lot of districts to make these other calls. But I really think the moving ahead on these other projects is important for us to do now and not hold off on that. And then we can make the decision. And that is putting pressure on us by, say, November or whatever, if you want to have timeline on that.
I'd like to suggest an alternative to, which I wish I'd thought of earlier. I don't think that there's a lot of interest in increasing beyond 10,000 Pioneer Park.
10 million.
10 million, excuse me. It sounds like there may be some interest in increasing Warm Springs past 6 million. I would like to include Warm Springs at 6 million in the straw poll. And if we find, and if we get more information that we need to increase that, then I would like to increase it. But I would like to at least ensure that we're going to get 6 million and that we move forward on that now.
And I second that with Pioneer Park then. Like, that's my friendly, amendment that we
Then
We stick with the numbers.
Councilmember
I
Victoria.
would really like to stop the Tasmanian devil swirling that we're doing with our rhetoric right now. The biggest deadline we have in this is that by the end of 2024, we have to have those generators installed. We have about 22 weeks minimum, so we need to allocate at least 6 months to get the things. We should commit that by the last meeting in August, we have revisited this and voted on it, but we are no longer engaged in useful conversation. And I'd really like to move on to something useful.
Wait, when you say
Councilmember,
August, do you mean?
No, I'd like to get this done before fall. I'd like us to put an urgent push on us to get this done before the fall starts. But there are some questions that need to be answered, and none of the suggestions are doing anything for us to get down to the brass tacks. They're just spiraling us.
okay, I have a straw poll on the floor. I think that we
Okay.
go on.
Yeah, I will restate the straw poll that we approve as suggested by the administration, the city cemetery, road repairs and reconstruction, the 600 North Corridor transformation, radio towers, the central plant electrical transformer upgrade and emergency backup generators, the West Side Railroad quiet zones, Smith's Ballpark improvements, and the urban wood reutilization equipment and storage additions.
I have a straw poll on the floor. Give me
Some discussion.
We already discussed
this.
Yeah,
We've already
well,
discussed. Any thumbs up or thumbs down?
Hold on, I'm not done yet. Can we do like a friendly amendment to that? Like the friendly amendment?
Only the friendly makes accepted.
I think we've spiraled too far. I think we spiraled too far to have actual good decision making. I think we need to move on and
Okay, thumbs up or thumbs down? This is a straw poll.
We can amend it. Amendments. That's the question that I had.
We didn't have a date. If you want to make a friendly amendment to the date of November, you can do that.
No, to the date of August.
Wait, restate.
Councilmember Wharton, could you put your microphone? Thank you.
The straw poll was to have no date.
Well, no, I think, if it's a friendly amendment, you can ask Councilmember Pui that.
Yeah, I wanted to ask for a friendly amendment. And the friendly amendment to me is to talk about this again, either in August or September. And then get all of the bonds out and decided on before it's too late. So I'm there. Unfortunately, I won't be in town July 19th to be able to discuss, so I was hoping that we could do this in August. Finalize a GO bond, finalize the sales tax, and move on.
Okay.
Okay, so I accept the friendly amendment to add September as the deadline to revisit the other items, including Glendale has a discussion.
That's not what I heard Councilmember Valamoros ask.
But
I think I heard her ask to delay the entire conversation.
No.
Oh, no. The friendly amendment was to revisit those three items,
Okay,
plus
sorry,
Glendale
my mistake.
in September.
Fine.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. There's a friendly amendment. Okay. We got 7 ups. All right. We're taking a break.
Yeah.
Till 5 o'clock. 1700. be item number 5, the capital improvement program project follow-up. We'll be postponing that to a future date. And we're going to move on to item number 7, which is an informational update on the anti-gentrification and displacement plan, Thriving in Place. At the table, I have Allison Rowland from the staff here, Blake Thomas, Dave Driscoll, and Tim Thomas also at the table. Allison, time is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as you mentioned, this builds on the update that was presented on this work at the April 12th work session, and it'll include results of the team's community engagement efforts and data mapping and refinements to its plans for the next phase. The council allocated funding in June 2020 for a gentrification assessment and displacement mitigation plan, and the project work got underway September 2021. The goal of the project is to identify policy measures that can help current residents remain in Salt Lake City as it grows and changes. And the next phase of the project will focus on developing policy recommendations and collaborative solutions, including a displacement mitigation plan. So today is an opportunity for the council to provide feedback on this work at this point. And CAN expects to return in September with proposed policy recommendations. There are a number of policy questions in the staff report associated with this, but I will turn it over to Blake for what he needs to say.
Good afternoon. Thanks for the opportunity to present a progress update on the Thriving in Place efforts to date. The last time we presented in April, Phase 1 outreach efforts were just wrapping up and the data had not been analyzed. We now have a better understanding of where the community is and the extent of the need. The Thriving in Place team, the 2 sitting to my right who are in town from California for this briefing, have done some excellent work, which presents a sobering picture. So today, the team will be presenting what we learned from our engagement and the data analysis with the intention of setting the stage for future policy discussions. And I wanted to thank you again for allowing us the time to present today and for your participation in helping the city find solutions. The city has accomplished or made reasonable progress on 27 of the 27 action items outlined in Growing SLC. The city has also spent $24.5 million to stabilize rent in the last 2 years, $4.6 million in homeless services and neighborhood support, and this past year the council approved $20.1 million toward housing, prioritizing deeply affordable housing. All of this goes a very long way, and we will see today that continued investment in housing is needed to support Salt Lake City residents. So looking forward to the conversation this afternoon and your input, and I'll now turn the time over to David Driscoll, who is the lead consultant on the project. Thanks.
Great, thanks. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having us. It's been an honor and a pleasure to work with your city staff and with the community on this project. We've called it Thriving in Place through actually a conversation with our community working group to frame it as the thing we're trying to achieve, which is to create a place where people can stay, afford to be, raise their families, grow old, and thrive. And that's, while we're looking at how we can stop displacement, all of that work is towards creating a healthy, thriving place for everybody. I'm going to talk briefly about what we heard through the community engagement. Tim's going to talk a little bit about what we learned through the data analysis, and then I'm going to talk about what comes next very briefly. I know you're behind schedule, so we're going to fly through a little bit. And I just want to call out to people listening in, all of the material we're going to talk about has been uploaded to the thrivinginplaceslc.org website. There's a summary report there. There's links for digging deeper. You can download the survey data and look at it by council district, by income, et cetera. You can go to the sorting of all the input we had from interviews and focus groups, but we're going to give you a very high takeaway presentation this evening. So key takeaways. Probably not a big surprise, but displacement pressures in Salt Lake City are very high, and all the analysis shows that it's getting worse. It's very top of mind for the community. From the survey, I'll talk a little bit about the survey input that we had. It's impacting a lot of people in many areas of the city, not in just 1 or 2 neighborhoods. We're losing diversity as a result of displacement. One of the things that Tim will talk a little bit about is that there are no...
Go ahead, raise your voice and
Sure.
bring the mic up.
Absolutely.
Closer. Sorry.
Yes. Can you hear me now?
And-
Is that better?
And I apologize. Taylor, could we get the slides, please?
Oh. Do I control the slides?
No.
Okay. I'm sorry. I thought I was like flying through my slides here. Sorry.
But you can tell her when you need to shift
Okay.
to the next.
Yes, please.
Okay, because he's
Actually, if we go to the slide deck, well, actually, if we have this up, I'm just going to talk briefly. Oh, okay, never mind.
It was.
Let's go to the slide deck.
Nope.
This is for the previous one, Scott. We need the next one for the Thriving in Place briefing.
Apologize for that.
No, I do.
Okay, we're up. Excellent. Let's go to the third slide. So the project is organized in 2 phases, and we are at a milestone of finishing phase 1, which was really about listening and learning so that we have a clear understanding, a shared understanding of what the problem is that we're trying to solve. That's,
Sorry.
we can go to the third slide. Is that-
Scott, can you move it ahead 2 slides, please? Or Taylor, whoever's in control.
Well, I'm going to continue just so we don't lose too much time.
Thanks.
We're organized in two phases. This is encapsulating what we heard and learned and our understanding of the problem. And the next phase is really the policy making, the crafting collaborative solutions. And I do want to emphasize we're approaching this as, really importantly what the city can do, but also looking broadly at what our other partners can do, because really responding to the challenges we face is going to take a multi-sectoral approach. So our process after today, we're actually starting meetings tomorrow to really start the phase 2 of this work. If we get to the 4th slide, that'll have the key takeaways.
Sorry, our staff lost internet connection, so we're having technical
Okay.
difficulties.
Should I just pause or continue?
No, I'm sorry, we're running so far behind. If you could just keep going.
Yeah,
And
no,
then
that's- I'm
The council members have some of the slides in their email, so hopefully they can pull that up.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No problem, no problem. So I'm just going to jump to the punchline, which is we really see the results from the phase 1 work as a call to action. And I want to frame that within understanding that the city has been doing a lot to respond to the pressures of rising rents, rising home prices, and the impacts that has particularly on the most vulnerable people in the community, the lowest income people who really don't have any fallback position. When rents go up, they either have to leave or they become homeless or they end up doubling up, tripling up in housing. All this data should underscore that the need for a coordinated response to the challenges of displacement. I want to underscore, okay, if we go to the next slide, underscore we did a really broad and deep engagement effort, and I want to call out and thank Drs. Ives Garcia and Alessandro Rigolon from the University of Utah and dozens of their students who were out in the community interviewing people, doing surveys, hosting focus groups. They really helped us leverage the outreach effort and reach thousands, literally thousands of people. We also had 6 community liaisons who worked with us, people from community who we hired to go and do in-language engagement with people who are particularly hard to reach. So we had focus groups with people who are unsheltered, people who are in insecure housing situations, so we could really understand not just the data, but the real sort of the life stories of what it's like to go through displacement and the impacts that ripple beyond just being displaced from a house, but sort of what happens in people's lives and how do they deal with the impacts of that and the repercussions. We're going to fly through the next few slides. So if we skip past getting the word out, there's our community liaisons who I described on the next slide. We'll go to the next slide after that. if I can do it. We did, one of the things that was particularly, I think, great in this, EVA Center students did workshops in several schools. We had about 200 students talking about what home means, talking about neighborhood change that's happening in their neighborhoods, their idea what makes a neighborhood a great place. And I'm going to jump ahead and just, out of the interest of time, jump down to slide 13. That's called Dig into the Data. If we go there, I'm going to skip over all the details on the survey results and input and really encourage people to go check out the summary report. We designed it to be a pretty quick read. You can spend 30 seconds on the website and get the key takeaways. You can open the report document and read it for about maybe half hour max and really get some of the more detail. And then you can dig into the data and actually download the survey data, download the detailed report that Tim's now going to talk about from the Urban Displacement Project to really understand the dynamics of what's playing out in terms of displacement, the factors that drive it, and the geography where it's playing out in Salt Lake City and around the region. I'd really want to underscore this is not just a Salt Lake City issue, it's a regional issue. And the analysis looked at the region and also underscored this is not unique to the Wasatch area. This is playing out in cities around the country in terms of escalating housing prices and rents and what that's doing to communities. So there's a lot of great things to learn from, and there's also a lot of great opportunity to lead and show other cities what can be done. I'm going to pass it to Tim to talk about the work that they did.
Thanks, Dave, so much. Can I move it to slide 16, please? This is the second map. There you go. Thank you so much. My name is Tim Thomas. I'm the research director for UC Berkeley's Urban Displacement Project. I study gentrification and displacement across the nation, and we specialize on international gentrification and displacement, and it's been a real honor to work on Salt Lake City, and I have to admit, I found some things here that I've never seen before. So what you see on the map on the right here is all the green areas in that area within the city of Salt Lake City are what we call considerable affordable spaces or neighborhoods for folks that are making about 50% of the area median income. And the slashes, the red slashes, in short, show the displacement that's going on in the areas. What that tells me is that every single area in Salt Lake City, unfortunately, that is affordable is experiencing displacement. That means there are also no green areas anywhere else in the city, meaning that when low-income households are displaced, there's nowhere for them to go. That was one of the more shocking findings I found before. And a lot of the problems that this draws from is that this is a regional impact. Ogden to Provo, everything is reflected, and the market is impacted what's going on in Salt Lake City. It's a whole regional issue where there's a lot of folks moving in, but the market is also increasing at a very, very, very rapid rate. So if I can move on to the next slide, I'll just talk real quickly about key takeaways and then let you all ask key questions on what you would like to know more about in this report. One of the big things, the first thing is that displacement is very well significant and it's getting worse in Salt Lake City. There are no more affordable neighborhoods in Salt Lake City where families can move once displaced. And I want to point out that we used a model that's never been used before in measuring displacement, so this is one of the more accurate models that we've been able to develop in actually the world. And Salt Lake City is growing so much to the point that there are not enough affordable units for low-income households. In fact, the group extremely low income, or folks who make about 30% AMI, there are 3 families for every 1 affordable unit for them. Almost half of all Salt Lake City households are rent burdened. More than half of all families with children live in displacement risk neighborhoods. Latinx and Black households have median incomes that are lower than what is required to afford rent in the city. Displacement affects more than half of white households in Salt Lake City and disproportionately affects households of color. In many areas experiencing high displacement risk were redlined in the past and are still highly segregated today. And one last point I want to make is that every one of these data points is a person and an experience that people are going through. And what happens is the market is really pushing and impacting a lot of the low-income population to the point where they can't afford to live in Salt Lake City anymore. There are no more affordable units in that, and I'm happy to talk more about any points of this that I brought up or meet with you individually too.
I'm going to quickly close it by highlighting that what comes next. So there's a lot of data to dig into, and we want to make sure people understand that. We've also started developing a framework for what we do in response. And if you go on the website, there's both the What We Heard and Learned page, which gives all the results from phase 1. And then if you click on Priorities for Action, you'll find that there are 5 draft guiding principles that we've put out, and these will be the focus for a conversation tomorrow with a cross-departmental team here at the city, and on Thursday with our community working group as a first step towards going back to the community and talking about, okay, here's the situation, what are the things we could do? And just to highlight examples, one of the guiding principles is that we need to be both pro-housing and we need to be pro-tenant, and we need to do those at the same time. And oftentimes those are set up as being somehow in opposition to each other, but we need to do them both. So there's sort of going to be a combination of policy recommendations. We'll come back to you. And these are draft guiding principles. We're going to have a lot of conversation about them, but we'll be coming back. September is our target to come back and present to you an anti-displacement strategy, some specific things in a sequence and phase that could be done to make a difference immediately, and then some important things that need to be done that would have a longer-term benefit, but an important benefit. Yeah, I think
Thank you, Councilman Romano. I appreciate this, and I'm terrified by what you just told us. My question for the second phase of your work is, how specific is that going to be to Salt Lake City and our legal landscape? Because a lot of the things that I imagine working in a lot of other states cannot. And are your solutions going to be specific to what we as the city council and the mayor of Salt Lake City have the control to do? Or are you also going to be looking at things that we need to be lobbying the state or working with other city partners in other cities to be doing as well? Like how specific or broad is your policy recommendation set going to be?
Yeah, no, it'll be specific to Salt Lake City, but I completely expect that it will have things in there that may not be possible under existing law, but lay out an advocacy position or a set of potential regional strategies to work with other partners to maybe change what's possible in order to respond effectively to the challenge.
Thanks. And can I ask a follow-up question? I guess I think about housing a lot and this question a lot, and I can come up with a lot of things that I think would work, but is there in that work, are we going to have like sort of a prioritization list of like, here's the most important thing, and you need to be focusing on creating this many units, but also this many affordable units? Like I have a hard time knowing if we're working enough on just creating units, just creating supply in total, or if we need to really focus more on just creating specifically affordable units. I think displacement is happening at all levels in the market, in my observation, but you probably know a little bit better than me. So I think we kind of have to create housing at all levels, but I guess how specific is that policy recommendation going to be able to get us?
So this was initiated as a community-driven process, so we're going to undertake the next phase as a community-driven process continued around the collaborative solutions. I expect that everything that you just brought up will be on the table in that, and that there'll be a number of recommendations. I think, what's important about this, that it's not, yes, it intersects with an affordable housing plan, but this is an anti-displacement strategy, so it's going to focus in particular on the most vulnerable and things we can do to stop their displacement, but also speak to other things that are important to do on a broader scale in order to create, again, the goal of this is a city that you can stay and thrive in.
And your recommendations and the study, I noticed, focuses just on rent, because not ownership. We are just looking to make sure people have a roof over their head and not about generational wealth creation, all those other things.
Right. Certainly it intersects with home ownership in terms of renters being able to shift into home ownership, but the focus is on renter households who are at risk of displacement.
And just on, this is affordable housing, and then we talk also about affordable living, which includes another big portion of their income, which is the transportation side. Does your study kind of bring those two together, keep them separate, and will we see something on the transportation? Because I know that's also a big piece of their affordability.
So one of the advantages of having the multi-department team that's working with us is looking at points of intersection between this work and other work that the city's doing, but to the extent that it's pertinent to an anti-displacement strategy, we will speak to it in this document, but we may also point to parallel or other efforts being undertaken that are relevant, but maybe not core in the anti-displacement strategy. But that's all TBD through the process, yeah.
Gotcha, thank you.
Yeah.
Council, any other questions? I look forward to the next discussion. I know, as Councilmember Romano says, it is very scary, but, sorry, Councilmember Wharton.
Sorry, can you just restate earlier, you said you saw something you'd never seen before, and it sounded like you were saying that people are being displaced and there's nowhere else to go, but I feel like I read that happens in a lot of cities. There are no more lesser or more affordable neighborhoods. So what do you mean specifically about Salt Lake that you haven't seen before?
So of the dozens of cities I've studied, they at least have some place that people can be displaced to. Oftentimes that's a community that is 40 miles, 50, 60 miles away. Because of the way the Wasatch Front is built, the geography of the area, St. George is one of the closest towns past that.
Oh, I see. So like even outside of Salt Lake City, they can't, when they go to another neighboring suburb, they don't have cheaper options.
Right.
Got it.
Because the way that Utah is built up, it's a very rural area. So they're either becoming homeless, doubling up, or leaving the state altogether.
Got it.
And that's something I haven't seen before.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question on, and I know you said you're going to come back with some ideas and solutions. Will this apply to, or have you guys looked at some of the RDA's ideas that we already have to kind of mitigate some of these issues that we're dealing? Or is the administration's desire that what you propose, we also take a look into within the RDA lens? Or is it just citywide but not necessarily RDA related? Do you know?
I think there'll be a combination of things, citywide and more focused in terms of having a equity lens in terms of where this, there's not going to be a one-size-fits-all solution, nor is there going to be any quick, easy solution. It's going to have to be tailored to particular areas and particular neighborhoods.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Angela Price, Policy Director in Community Neighborhoods. Just want to speak to the RDA. So we have a city stakeholder group that consists of members from almost every single division or department within the city. The RDA staff have been participating in those discussions. And then this week, in addition to the city stakeholder meeting, we're going to be having a discussion with just the housing policy folks. So that will be representatives from community neighborhoods, the RDA and economic development, so that we can really look at, the idea here is not to look at policies in a silo within community neighborhoods or within RDA, but really understanding what our collective housing goals are as a city in relation to displacement and how we can put all of our programmatic resources towards mitigating that displacement and bringing those policies forward to you, whether that will be as the RDA board or the city council.
Thank you, Angela. I'm happy to hear that. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments?
I just wanted to make sure, because sometimes people who are joining the meeting listening can't see the slides that are on. The website is thrivinginplaceslc.org, and that has a lot of this information that they talked about. If council members have any other questions based on that information on the website, please just send them to council staff, and we'll make sure to get them to the consultants. So, thanks.
All right. Scary, but very enlightening and very needed. So appreciate that, Tim and David. All right. Have a great day. Angela?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks a
Thank
lot.
you so much for your time.
All right. Allison, you're going to hang out here.
My time is not served yet.
And council, we're moving on to item number 8, informational midpoint check-in on ballpark station area plan. Allison's here. Oh, Blake, come on up. And Nanette and John Anderson. I'm not sure if, oh, they're coming up. Oh, there they are. Gotcha. Allison, it's all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My eyes get worse as the night goes on. So yes, this is a briefing on progress in the new ballpark station area plan. The Department of Community and Neighborhood Development, or CAN, has been working on this since October 2020. The purpose of the briefing is to update the council at this midpoint in the process and provide the council the opportunity to make comments and suggestions on the draft plan. The plan is designed to guide future public and private investment in the vicinity of Smith's Ballpark and the ballpark track station. It recommends specific infrastructure improvements in the area to create a heart of the neighborhood, to facilitate transit connections, and to support livability and growth in residential, office, restaurant, and retail properties. The city's transportation division was awarded a transportation and land use connection grant from the Wasatch Front Regional Council, and this helped fund the plan. The draft plan is premised in large part on continued use of the city-owned ballpark facility by a privately owned sports franchise. The council and the administration agree on the importance of this private franchise in the city as a centerpiece to future planning and investment and to the neighborhood as a whole. The draft plan recommends 6 big moves, which Nanette will discuss more in her presentation. And the Planning Commission will consider the draft plan and hear public comment at their July 27th meeting. After additional reviews and updates, the plan will be brought back to the council for consideration and potential adoption later this year. The policy questions are in your staff report, including questions about public investments proposed in the area and other aspects, but I will turn it over to Nan unless someone else needs the mic first.
Thank you, Allison, and thank you, Council. I do have slides. Oh, it looks like Scott is sharing those. Thank you, Scott. And if we could go to the first slide. So the purpose of this presentation is to give the Council a briefing on the ballpark station area plan and where we are at in the process. The ballpark station area plan was initiated by the mayor in December 2020. The consultant on the plan was GSVS, whose staff work closely with to identify goals for the future development of the community. The station area plan is intended to capitalize on community assets and guide future development and redevelopment in the neighborhood. The plan's boundaries are within both the Central Community Master Plan and the Downtown Master Plan. The boundary includes the neighborhoods from I-15 to the west side of State Street and 900 South to 1700 South. During the development of the draft plan, the Central Community Master Plan, the Downtown Master Plan, Growing SLC, Plan Salt Lake, and Reimagine Nature were considered. Other plans that were considered that hadn't currently been adopted are Life on State, the Homeless Resource Center's Neighborhood Action Strategies, and the Salt Lake City Street Lighting Master Plan. And the next slide, please, Scott. When the process began in December 2020, the consultant and city staff spent 9 months identifying goals and meeting with community members and stakeholders. An online survey was published and notices of the survey were sent to the entire ballpark community. A steering committee met to discuss and make recommendations throughout 2021, and staff attended multiple community council meetings to answer questions and take public comments. Next slide. And next slide, please. So the ballpark station area plan proposes key concepts to guide development and redevelopment in the neighborhood. These key concepts will have significant impact to the ballpark neighborhood. The small area plans recommend 6 big moves in the community that will help transform the neighborhood as pressure for development or redevelopment occurs. These are listed on pages 6 through 10 of the draft plan and include creating and applying a ballpark station, transit station area zoning in the area identified as the heart of the neighborhood on the future land use map, reconfigure the ballpark's track station to improve access from the west, improve 1300 South for pedestrians by creating new crossings and expanding and upgrading the pedestrian realm, create a sense of place at and around the stadium, repurpose parking lots and underutilized properties to add activity to the heart of the neighborhood, and invest in community amenities and green spaces to balance density with livability factors. And next slide, please. The goals and strategies and actions are also listed in the small area plan on pages 11 through 15 on the draft. The goals here are broad in nature and direct future development in the community. Strategies are more focused than a goal and describe ways to implement the larger picture goal. Actions describe specific ways to implement the goal as development or redevelopment occur over a longer time frame. The proposed strategies includes connectivity, a safer pedestrian and bike network, addressing parking needs in the community, alleyway safety, enhance neighborhood green space, improve housing opportunity and mitigate displacement, and prioritizing safety and security. Next slide. The draft future land use map and accompanying future land use designations can be found on pages 17 through 19 of the plan. Each of the future land use designations describe the appropriate development pattern of the area, where density, building height, land use, emphasize transportation modes, and catalyst areas, which are attributes to the designation. The future land use map is a section of the draft plan that had the most recommended modifications during the public notification process and will directly affect zoning map updates and amendments as the small area plan is implemented. And next slide, please. There are several areas in the where transportation is addressed in the plan, but the major connections are described on pages 14 through 16 and page 20 of the draft plan. The recommendations include widening sidewalk widths, prioritizing heavily used corridors within the neighborhood. The plan also recommends bike routes on major streets like 300 West and Main Street, and east-west routes to the north of the ballpark station on Paxton Avenue, Kensington, and Andrew Avenues. Easier access to track stations is recommended with a pedestrian connection from the station to Lucy Avenue towards the north. And next slide. And the last key item that's proposed for the creation of the ballpark plan is the creation of a festival street. This festival street is proposed on West Temple Street, the immediate south of 1300 South, between the track station to the northwest of the Smith's Ballpark Stadium to the east. This festival street would extend from 1300 South to Albemarle Street to the south. The festival street would create a sense of place through the creation of a community gathering place during game day or non-game day events, and would shut down this portion of West Temple Street during these events. And the next slide, please. Great. The required public notification process began in December 2021 and continues today. Based on some of the public comments staff received, the small area plan has been modified to reflect these comments. On June 8th, 2022, the Planning Commission was briefed on the draft plan during a work session meeting, and additional modifications had been made to the draft plan as a result of this meeting. The station area plan will return to Planning Commission on July 27th for a public hearing and possible recommendation to the council. After this hearing, a transmittal to City Council is possible late summer for a possible hearing late summer or fall 22. And this is a good time if the council has any questions for staff or general comments, we're happy to address or answer those questions or comments.
Councilmember Mono.
Yeah, thanks, Nan. First, just a comment. I'm really excited for this. I have been involved and been able to, and I've been reviewing it and been in community meetings, and I think we need to give some props to Suze, who is here as well, who kind of started this in transportation, which is really weird, but I'm glad that the work from transportation is really more turned into this big planning effort. I really think it's. I think the vision that this presents for my neighborhood, I'm a resident of Ballpark, not just just council person for it. I think it's exactly what I am hoping to see my neighborhood transform into. I've said this a million times, but I think the Ballpark has so much potential to become one of the premier neighborhoods and really a story that like students in urban design classes are going to be looking at in 10 years and saying, like, how did they do that there? So I'm really excited, and I think that this plan, it sets us out on the right foot. I have one really specific question that I haven't been able to quite figure out. There's two maps in the plan that look almost similar. One is the land use map, and the other is the character area descriptions. Can you just talk me through the difference between those two maps and what people should look to the character area description map to, as opposed to the land use map?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So the character description map really describes what's presently at that location. So it describes attributes like building scale, massing of buildings, types of uses, general connectivity, attributes of the area. And the character map influenced the future land use map. And the future land use map would be a map that reflects the character maps, but it also proposes future land uses in the area. And it's the future land use map that influences the zoning map. So as the implementation of the Ballpark Station area gets underway, the zoning map would need to be amended, and that zoning map amendments would be influenced by this future land use map.
Thanks, that helps.
Any other questions or comments from the council? Nan, thank you very much. This is a very exciting. I'm excited about this project too. This is awesome. I love having these festival streets in particular. I think that's a great bonus to the area. So appreciate the briefing, and you guys have a great day. Unless there's any further questions. Nope. Thank you very much.
Thanks for your time.
Moving on to item number 9, the resolution to transit master plan implementation interlocal. Oh, that's a written briefing. So number 9 is a written briefing, and number 10, which is a board appointment for the Transportation Advisory Board, Janae Nardone, and she is going to come on the WebEx.
Mr. Chair, I don't see that she has joined yet, but I understand we're running just a little bit early now. we caught right back up to being on time.
Can I ask a question, on agenda question? Since we bumped the capital improvement projects, do we have to hold a second public hearing on CIP? Because that's tonight. But
yeah, the information has been available in the public realm, and so I think, and you've advertised the public hearing, so I think you have to go forward with the public hearing tonight.
But do we close? We already have a second one scheduled?
You have a second one scheduled for August 9th.
Great, thanks. That's what I wanted to know, because I didn't want the public not to have an opportunity to sort of respond to our discussion.
Are any of the board appointments here? Is Leo Masick or Olivia Aramito here? They're
Not
going to be
seeing
in.
any of them here yet. The council could go back to CIP discussions. 5:55 was the first one. A break?
You want to talk about capital improvements, or we can take a break?
Sorry, Chair, we can't hear you on WebEx. Is your microphone on?
So let's take a break until 5:55. Okay, 5:55. We'll come back. And we're moving on to item number 10, board appointment, the Transportation Advisory Board. And Janae Nardone is on the screen with us. Janae, welcome to the City Council meeting. Thank you very much for your desire to serve on the Transportation Advisory Board. Tell us a few reasons why tell us about why you want to join the board.
I've been engaged in community activities since I moved back to Salt Lake City. I came out here in 2010 for graduate school, lived here for a while, moved back to California and moved back. And as I intended to root here, I started engaging in the ways I could. So that most immediately meant community council, but for my career, I've worked in mission-oriented organizations and nonprofits with some experience with grassroots organizing and some experience around, looking at things through a diversity, equity, and inclusion lens. And I currently also serve on the board of Sweet Streets. I bike, walk, and take transit in Salt Lake City. And I'm familiar with those issues within in the ballpark, Liberty Wells, and our District 5 area. I'm rambling, but I think that gives you a kind of an idea. I care about our community.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Any questions, comments from the board? Councilmember Romano.
Hi, Janae. Thanks for applying for this. I know that you've been interested in this for a while. I was excited to see that the mayor selected your application for the Transportation Advisory Board because I know how engaged you are in these issues. So thank you for continuing to serve District 5 and the city.
Thanks, Darren.
And Janae, thank you very much for your time. There's no other further comments or questions here. Appreciate your engagement. I appreciate your desire to serve the city, and that's always a welcome for the volunteers to do that. So your name will be on tonight's consent agenda for our 7 o'clock formal meeting. You need not be present to win, but you can always join us and at our meeting. So have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Have a great night. And council, we're moving on to item number 11, which is the board appointment of the Transportation Advisory Board. Leo Masick is here. Come on up and you can sit right here. Pick a seat. And again, thank you for your engagement. Thank you for your application. And just tell us a little bit of the reason you want to join the board.
Sure. This board sort of combines my twin passions of transportation and Salt Lake City. So pretty good combo. I was not born here. I was born in Germany. Moved here when I was 4. My family moved here as refugees. And in short, this city shaped me in so many ways. And so it's an honor to be able to serve the city in this capacity in some small way. And as far as the transportation component, I went to school for city planning, and it's what I think about all the time. I walk, I bike, I take transit in this community, and I drive from time to time as well. So I have a pretty acute understanding of sort of some of the inequities that exist for people, especially for vulnerable road users, people that are walking and biking and taking transit. And so I have a ton of passion and enthusiasm for making things better for folks that fit those criteria.
Thank you, Leo. Any questions for Leo? You got some big smiles here, so no questions. And again, thanks for your passion. It's so refreshing to have someone again who wants to make the city better and has a passion on the side also. So appreciate it very much. Again, you will also be on our consent agenda of this evening's formal meeting, and you need not hang around until then, but you're more than welcome.
All right.
Thanks a lot, Leo.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, wonderful. And we're kind of...
Olivia was planning on joining in person, but I'm not seeing her. Oh, okay. She wasn't scheduled until 6:05, so...
She told me, she messaged and said that she is on her way. She's
Okay.
driving from Park City, so she might be
Great.
a couple minutes away.
That was, maybe I'll go through this announcement really quickly, if that's okay, and maybe buy a little time. Just wanted to make sure the council is aware that our meeting next Tuesday is at the Sorensen Center. And in preparation for that meeting, we've identified that there are some bandwidth limitations at the Sorensen Center. And so making sure that you download your packet in advance of the meeting, just in case there are issues downloading it while you're there, especially during the day when that internet is being used by a bunch of people who access the center. We'll have maybe some backup packets just so that if things aren't reliable, we can have a backup. There are a couple of ways you can download your Dropbox materials to your computer. You can download it from PrimeGov to your computer, or we can have a hard copy printed out for you. Just let us or your liaison know if you'd rather have a hard copy. So just let us know. And then if there are any questions about the logistics for that meeting, let us know that as well. Our staff's been working hard at noticing it and coming up with fun plans for it. So I think it will be a good experience. So, yeah.
Jen, it's probably worth letting the public know also that there is not planned to be a WebEx option for that meeting. Is that correct?
I think that's accurate, yes. Our staff has been, and I give credit to IMS and Cindy Lou for trying in all manner of ways to make it work. I think that the bandwidth issue has highlighted that that's just not a reliable enough option, and wanting to make sure that the public wasn't frustrated having planned on joining remotely and not having the ability to. That would be double the frustration. So we're hoping that the notice gives the public ample notice that, or the talking about it gives the public ample notice to get there if they want to listen. Of course, we'll have it broadcast. We'll record it and have it on all the normal places so people can walk, so people can watch after the fact. And yes, there will be a food truck for meeting attendees. So come to the meeting and get a raffle ticket or a thing for a meal at the food truck. Yes, go ahead.
Jen, is it possible that we do social media like every day from now on? Like every day is the same alert, hey, council meeting next week, you know, not in the city and county building?
I'm looking at Lehua. Maybe she knows more specifics about what the social media plans are. I have a feeling our people are already planning that. If they haven't, we've asked the mayor to promote it and share it on her social media feeds since there's a lot of engagement there. So, yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
Can I just say thank you to staff? I know this is like a Herculean lift, but like the meaning behind you all being willing to do this on the west side is just really special. Thank you.
I think we're all really excited for the event. I think it'll be great. And thanks for your guys' help in facilitating it. So should we take a quick break? The council could
yeah, we should, let's do that. Let's break for dinner. Okay.
So the council is going to recess for just a quick break, but we'll return in work session. So just so that the public knows.
Oh yeah, right. Public.
So it won't be for the formal meeting yet. We'll return to the work session once the board appointment. Oh, she's walking in.
Oh, never mind.
Councilmember Pui is our GPS tracker. Yeah. So maybe we take a quick 5-minute. We need to make sure we're back online. Great.
Yeah. Have a seat.
Thank you.
Sure thing. Council, we're back for item number 12, board appointment, Human Rights Commission. Olivia Aramilo. Aramilo. God, I can't even say that. Holy cow. Aramilo. Ilo.
I spent 20 years in the Air Force, and people said it all sorts of ways, so
yeah.
don't even
Holy
worry
cow,
about
I should
it.
be able to get that one straight. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Appreciate your engagement and your willingness to serve. Tell us a little bit about yourself and why you want to be on this board
So,
or commission.
yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, Councilman. My name's Olivia Jaramillo, and I was born and raised in Mexico. I immigrated to the United States when I was 14, and I've experienced many things in my life. I'm a transgender woman. I'm a retired Air Force veteran. I've ever since I retired from the military 3 years ago, I've been actively involved in politics because it feels like that's the right thing to do. And ever since I immigrated, I've always felt this need to help people. And being an immigrant, I've been on the other side. I've been on the other side of being thrown in the back of a Border Patrol van just because of my skin color. I came over as a documented immigrant, and it still occurred to me. For me, it's always been about correcting wrongs or ensuring people don't go through some of the experiences I've had. And I think that's what made me join the military. That's what made me run for the state legislature a couple years ago. That is what really drives my passion working with Equality Utah. I've always joke with my son, that's my son back there. And I always joke with him, that it's like this thing that we have that it's almost like we're like real life superheroes, all of us. Because anybody who wants to do better for somebody else, it's a hero. And I've always felt that drive within me to do so.
Thank you very much. Council, questions, comments?
I just wanted to say that I got to know Olivia in the last couple of years, and I'm very impressed with her community activism and involvement and just passion all around. So I'm very excited about this.
I've known Olivia for a long time, and she's an excellent District 3 resident in addition to being an excellent person. Yes, first and foremost, which district does she live in? But I can't think of a better fit for someone on our Human Rights Commission in the direction that we want our Human Rights Commission to take. And I think you'll be a great addition, and I'm super excited to support you. And thanks for applying.
We all have good things to say about you, so thank you. And I know Olivia for a few years and campaigning and things like that, and so I know her kindness. So I'm excited to bring this kind soul to this Human Rights Commission, and I know you're gonna make a great leader there. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
I think it's not often that literally every council member knows the applicant. So thank you so much for your involvement in everything, but also for being willing to spend a little more time with Salt Lake City on the Human Rights Commission. We're lucky to have you.
So much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your passion. I appreciate your willingness to get involved because that's a big effort. So, and this is a wonderful commission. So awesome. I appreciate that very much. You'll be on tonight's formal consent agenda. You do not need to be present for that, but you're more than welcome to show up and listen in. But
thank you.
But thank you very much for joining the commission.
Thank you very much.
We'll vote on it here in a second. Thank you very much, Olivia.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye-bye. And council, that we got to go through another steps. So reports to the chair, the vice chair. Reports to the announcer, the executive director.
I think we already covered that just before the break, so we're good.
And there's no closed session. We are adjourned for the working session. We'll be back at 7 o'clock for the formal session. All right.